Scott H. Hey, Scott H. I forgot my coffee downstairs. Hopefully you can hear me because my microphone and everything was disconnected yesterday by my wonderful dogs. So let's try my other mic and let me know. They love me, my dogs do. Hello, Sailor Outlaw George. Once y'all can hear me, let me know. I can just listen on my damn headphones and see myself. Ah, I hear myself. Let me try to play this and see what happens. Hold on.
Let's bring it out here, please.
Perfect. It worked. Great. So it's Sunday, and even though it's Saturday, really, because tomorrow is a holiday. This is a case, I don't know how many of you know about the case, probably a lot, but Heather Elvis, who went missing due to these two lunatics, a married couple. Hey, Tater. Y'all can hear me fine. You can hear me fine. So I've just been making candles and binging trials, which is typically what I do. So I wanted to play this one because I don't know how many people know exactly what happened with Heather. And she's still never been found to this day. It's a sad one. So since I was listening to it, I figured you guys could listen to it. And I'm getting texted or messaged. What do you people want from my life? Oh, that's Tater Center. Yeah, I've seen that one before. Funny as hell. Oh, we just got my auntie's death certificate back. They would just send it to me. Stop, dogs. Stop. You know what I did too? I cracked open one of my... I have 3 screens, and one of them just cracked right in half. Because I had a little thing up top, like a little clip that I had a light clip to. In your defense, you said it. And it just cracked the screen like... Well, that's not good. And it doesn't crack it like glass. It cracks it like a black film goes over your whole screen. It's so weird. Thank you, Cammie. Yeah, it was pretty shocking. It was definitely really shocking to lose her the way that we did. Definitely not something that I nobody anticipated it. I don't know. It was crazy. It's been a crazy few weeks, that's for sure. But my cousin, her daughter just sent it to me and sent it over. So I didn't know until just now. This is my... Let me see. I'll share this with you all. Oh, I don't... how can I do that? Oh, there you go. Like that. Okay, wait a minute. Hold on. That's my auntie. That's my beautiful auntie. It is a shock. It definitely is a shock. So I still can't believe it. I mean, I haven't seen her since 2017. in person when she came to Christmas in Boston, but we were still very close. So yeah, it was a shocker. That's for sure. Her daughter, she only has one child, so her daughter's trying to deal with everything. It's been a lot for her because she's a kid. She's 22, but she's a kid. So anyway, yeah. So I don't know how many of you know about this case, but it's a crazy one. It is a crazy one. So I'm going to start playing it while I'm making all the pretty candles. I'll be in chat too, and I'll be back and forth. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Let me mute and hit play.
Everyone, real quick, please make sure your cell phones are off, please, all the way off. And as the jury enters and exits here, please remain seated until they are fully gone before you get up. Thank you.
The judge, we all said, every judge is different. I don't require you to see it when the jury comes in. That's all I put in. Where to go? Where the Supreme Court wants to see that article in that? They all, there were 2 lawyers in the back of that. Me and Brookings, they were back top and bottom. But just help me with that. And alternates, let me just tell you this, Matt, for to resolve this dispute, you and only you have the responsibility of deciding the true facts of this dispute.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. When the judge read off the indictment in this case, you may have heard that the facts of this case occurred on December 18, 2013. However, the issues in this case are about as old as man has been on this earth. See, at its heart, this case is about an affair, an extramarital affair that man, the defendant, Sidney Moorer, had with 20-year-old Heather Elvis. And like with a lot of affairs, or most affairs, probably every affair, there were consequences. Now, consequences are for the most part in life unavoidable. We've all heard the phrase, for every action, there is a reaction. An analogy I like to use, or like to think about when in that context, is a picture of a small boy on the banks of a river with a rock in his hand. Picks that rock up, throws it in the river. There are consequences from that boy's actions of throwing that rock into the river. For the rock's gone. For the boy, he might have dirt on his hands, might have dirt under his fingernails. But there's also consequences to the water. There might be a splash. There are those ripples that come off, little mini waves that come off from where the rock impacted. Those are all consequences of that boy's actions of throwing the rock into the water. Now, in the ordinary case of an affair, you might think that the consequences would be something along the lines of embarrassment, maybe a separation, maybe even a divorce. Those would be the ripples you would expect to see from an affair, the consequences. For 20-year-old Heather Elvis, however, the consequences of her affair with that man were not simply ripples in the water. They were the equivalent of a tidal wave. And you're going to hear that that tidal wave came crashing down on her on the morning of December 18th, 2013, when that man, Sidney Moorer, kidnapped her at the Peachtree boat landing. Now, the word I just used, kidnapping, that might have put a picture in your mind. You might picture men with guns or masks, tying people up, holding them hostage, maybe sending ransom letters to their families. And while yes, all of that is kidnapping, kidnapping is actually much broader than that. Under the law of kidnapping, if you trick someone, if you inveigle someone, if you decoy them into becoming confined, becoming seized, in order to take them, you are guilty of kidnapping. If you set a trap, lure that person into the trap, spring that trap, capture them, take them, seize them, you are just as guilty as kidnapping as if you put a gun in their back and put them in the trunk of a car. And that's important for all of you to understand at the outset. Because what the evidence is going to show you today is that on December 18th, in the early morning hours, that man set a trap for Heather Elvis. Started with a phone call at 1:30 in the morning from a payphone in Myrtle Beach. Lured her to a boat landing and then sprung the trap. I'm going to go into specifics of December 18th in a little bit. But before doing that, I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the other facts you're going to hear today about the relationship between the defendant and the victim, Heather Elvis. You're going to hear from several coworkers and friends of Heather Elvis. Heather Elvis worked at a restaurant called the Tilted Kill. It was located in Myrtle Beach. She was a hostess there. You're going to also hear that the defendant, Sidney Moorer, worked there as well. He was a maintenance man, did odd jobs for the restaurant, replaced tile, that kind of activities. That's where the affair began. Those coworkers are going to tell you how the affair began in the late spring of 2013, and that the defendant would regularly bring her coffee to work, bring her snacks, come to work just to spend time with her. Those same coworkers are also going to tell you how the relationship ended in late October, early November of that same year when the defendant's wife found out. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of that affair. The end of that relationship is an important part of this case because that is when those consequences, that's when those ripples in the water for Heather Elvis really began to be seen. For the weeks following the end of that relationship, she was harassed and upset. But you're also going to hear that in December of that year, Heather started putting it all behind her. Those coworkers I suspect are going to tell you that she started acting like her old self again, laughing, having a good time. She was even going on dates. But because of that tidal wave that came crashing down on her on December 18th, she was never able to put it fully behind her, never able to move on with her life. Now, one more thing before I go into the events of the morning of the 18th. I want you to understand something. The defendant is a smart man. Going back to my analogy about the boy on the banks of the river. If that boy didn't want you to see that he threw the rock or know that he threw a rock into the water, he tried to dust the dirt off his hands, get it out of his fingernails. Make sure he didn't have the dirt on his hands to show that he threw that rock. The defendant did the same thing in this case, as you'll see. Anything that he could control, anything that he could do to make sure you didn't know what he did, dusted it off as best he could. But couldn't do anything about the ripples in the water because that was outside of his control. That was outside of his ability to change. You can't stop the ripples. Can't control, can't make them stop, can't make you all not see them. And it's those ripples in the water that are going to show you, there's those ripples in the water that would show you that boy threw that rock in the water, and it's those same ripples in the water that are going to show you that man right there kidnapped Heather Elvis. The morning of December 13th, 2013. You actually have to go back to the night before. On the 17th night, the night of the 17th, Heather Elvis had a date with a man named Geraldi. She actually went to high school with him. They'd reconnected on a website, Facebook or Instagram or some such. And they'd agreed to go out to dinner. Went to dinner, watched a movie, and as you'll hear from that date, he dropped her off at her house at about 1:30 in the morning, 1:15, 1:30, kissed her goodnight and left. It was after the end of that date when that tidal wave first really began to start swelling. Because you'll see that after that date, at 1:35 a.m. in the morning, there was a phone call to Heather Elvis's phone. It was from a payphone located off of Seaboard Street in Myrtle Beach. And there was a 4-minute conversation between Heather's phone and that payphone. Who made that call? That man. Now, at the time, the defendant thought that was just dirt on his hands that he could wipe away, because you're going to hear that he didn't tell police right away that he made that phone call. An officer went and talked to him on the night of the 20th, questioned him about contact, admitted that he had contact with Heather Elvis that night of the morning of the 18th, but never said anything about the payphone call. In fact, when investigators actually interviewed him and questioned him about making the payphone call, he denied it. It was only when he realized that it wasn't dirt on his hands, that it was one of the ripples in the water, when he was confronted with a video showing him using that payphone in the time that the phone call was made to Heather Elvis, that he admitted that he actually made the phone call. Again, that's a ripple in the water that shows you his actions. What you will see, ladies and gentlemen, is following that payphone call, Heather Elvis tried everything she could to get back in touch with the defendant. Called that payphone 9 times. Apparently, she didn't know it was a payphone. Obviously, it went unanswered. 9 times she called that payphone. And after calling that payphone 9 times, well, she called the defendant's phone. First time it didn't get answered. Called it back a second time, and it did. And there was another 4+ minute conversation between that man and her. And that's important as well, ladies and gentlemen. Because immediately after that phone call, Heather Elvis left her house and drove to what's called Peachtree Boat Landing. Now, for those not familiar, Peachtree Boat Landing is a dark corner of Horry County, about 10 miles from Heather Elvis's house. Right down the road from his. But what's important is not about that phone call, it's not only that Heather drove to the landing. You're going to see that the defendant also did. You see, again, he thought his truck going to the landing was dirt on his hands that he could wipe away by telling the police, I never went to the landing, my truck never went to the landing, I didn't go down there. However, there were 2 ripples in his plan. 2 surveillance cameras that were located between the defendant's house and the boat landing that captured his truck going down there. And you're going to hear from an expert witness about how unique his truck was and how that expert witness is convinced that it was, in fact, his truck that went to that landing that day. And after hearing from that witness, you're going to be convinced that it was his truck that went to the landing that day. Now, once both the defendant and Heather Elvis were at that landing, that's when the trap was sprung. And the way we know that, well, we know that because Heather Elvis was never seen again. Never heard from again, never contacted friends again, gone. Like the rock in the water, gone. lured there by him. The events following the 18th, law enforcement first became involved. Actually, law enforcement did become involved the early morning hours of the 18th, although they didn't know it at the time. You're going to hear from a patrol officer who was on routine patrol. Basically, his job is to ride around the county and make sure there's nothing going wrong. And one of his spots he routinely checked was Peachtree Boat Landing. He's going to tell you that at about 4 o'clock in the morning, give or take 20 minutes from the time that both Heather Elvis and Sidney Moorer were at the landing, that he saw Heather's car. Nobody else was around. Nobody was walking on the road. Nobody was at the landing in trouble. He saw her car. Didn't really think anything of it at the time. First time he'd seen the car. Thought maybe somebody left it, went off with somebody. Thought maybe somebody just had a car trouble and parked there. It was actually 2 days later, after that car sat there for a couple of days, or a day, excuse me, it was actually the 19th, the next day, that the police began to understand what actually had happened. And the police investigated. And the police went and talked to that man, Sidney Moorer. And you're going to see the road officer, another patrol officer, a different patrol officer than the one that saw the car the first time, went and talked to Sidney Moorer. And you're going to hear his statement to that officer. It's going to be difficult to hear portions of it, so you're going to have to listen up as best you can. But there are parts that are difficult. The equipment's not the greatest in the world. But you're also going to hear that then he talked to a detective later on that same day. And you're going to hear about his lies during that statement and how he came clean on some of it, but not all of it. In the days following the 18th, ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you that you're going to see evidence that the defendant tried to wipe his hands clean. And there's one other way that he tried to wipe his hands clean. In this one, well, you're going to hear from a family friend of the defendant's, a family friend of the defendant, his son's friend, actually, who was over at the defendant's residence in the weeks before Heather Elvis went missing. That friend is going to tell you that he saw a working camera system at the defendant's house that captured his yard, the activity around his house. Now, you're also going to see that on the 21st, 3 days after Heather Elvis went missing, that man bought a brand new surveillance system from Sam's Club, installed it. Consequence of him buying that new surveillance system, the old one was never seen again. Vanished like the rock in the water. Gone. The defendant tried everything he could to wipe the dirt off his hands. And you're not going to see a picture of him committing the crime. You're not going to see an eyewitness come into court and say, I saw him kidnap Heather Elvis at the Peachtree Boat Landing on December 18, 2013. You're just not going to see that because he made sure that his trap got set in an area where there wouldn't be witnesses, where there wouldn't be photographs. But like the proverbial boy on the banks, you're going to know that that rock got thrown by looking at the ripples in the water. Last time I'm going to talk about the banks and the boy throwing a rock, I promise. But there's one thing I want you to understand. If you told that little boy, saw him with a rock in his hand and said, you do not throw that rock in the water. You hear somebody call your name, you turn around for a second, hear a splash and turn back, and the boy's doing this, wiping the dirt off his hands, and you see the ripples in the water. Did you see that boy throw the rock? No. Do you have an eyewitness sitting there telling you that boy threw a rock? No. But you know that boy threw the rock because that's your common sense. And that's all we're going to ask you to do. Because if you use your common sense and you look at the evidence in this case, with the same certainty that you would know that that boy threw the rock, you're going to know that that man kidnapped Heather Elvis. And that is why at the end of this trial, my co-counsel Nancy Livesay is going to come up here and she's going to ask you to find him guilty of kidnapping. Thank you.
This court, Your Honor. Well, what do we need to be here for? We've got it all figured out. Boy threw a rock in the water. And you saw the ripples. You didn't see the boy throw the rock, but he threw a rock because there's ripples. Well, how about if you got 6 boys standing there on the bank? Can you tell me which boy threw the rock based upon the ripples if you didn't see it? No. Now, the longer an opening statement, in my experience, and this is only my experience, I can only speak for myself, the worse and weaker the case. I didn't want to get up and go through the whole case and try the whole case in an opening statement, and I'm still not going to do that, as was just done. But there are a couple of things I'm going to point out to you, because the reason that is done is to get in your mind, this happened and this happened and this happened. Well, none of that happened until it comes from that witness stand. The boy who saw a surveillance camera, until he sits up there and talks about that, and you can judge that and see if it even factors in. Because you're going to also hear evidence. The only reason new surveillance cameras were put in at his house is because of publicity and how crazy this case got and the number of complaints he had to put in because people are coming on his property. His life's being threatened. His children's lives are being threatened. Police will show up, and they might believe him, they might not. He wanted it on video, and he got it on video. You're going to hear evidence in this case that at least 2 individuals connected with the Elvis family were arrested for obstruction of justice for tampering with evidence, trying to make it look like my client was guilty of something that he's not. And let me back up what I wanted to say first, but that boy throwing the rock got me off to a quicker start. I represent Sidney Moorer, and it's my pleasure to represent Sidney Moorer. And Sidney Moorer sits at that table, not guilty, and he is not guilty. The judge gave a fantastic explanation of the law and how we operate with jury trials. I can't prove to you that I didn't do something, and therefore I don't have to. That's not the way we do things. The judge also talked about this being the best system in the world, the best legal system. Now, we hear a lot of people talk and complain about it. And I think that's because what we're doing is we're weighing it up against what we see and how we live and what's going on right here in front of our faces. And I think what the judge was doing and what we ought to do when we make that statement is we look at the justice system of other countries. And when you do that, and I used to not always do that. I'm not a legal scholar. I haven't studied jury systems in Europe and stuff like that. But I will tell you this, the first time that it really entered my mind, and I used to say that was the best system in the world. And that was a lot of me. I'm a lawyer, so I believe that. I'd always heard that. I've been taught that. Post 9/11, when I learned about the Taliban, and things started coming out about how things were operating over there in their justice system. And believe me, today as we sit here, there are many countries that operate the same justice system. You have somebody say this person did something wrong. You need one other person to agree with you, and you got them. You don't have a jury trial. Can you imagine that? And the reason that stuck in my mind was because in Afghanistan, they didn't let the people play soccer anymore. And I think it was because they didn't want them to have fun. I don't know if it was a religious thing, but I know they couldn't because the soccer field was a killing field. That's where they took those people from there, probably a 20-minute trial, and hung them in the soccer field. We don't do that. We don't do that. My client is here, and he has been put in a position to fight for his life. You will hear that the jury is the bedrock and the most important thing in a trial. Oftentimes that is said. I've heard it over and over again, but I need you to know that it's not something that is just said, and it's not just words. It is the absolute truth. And I don't know if you know how true that it is. Because when you are accused of doing something,
there's a limited number of things you can do if you did not do it. You can say, hey, I know I had an affair with this girl. I know I called her that night from a payphone. And you're going to hear evidence. It was because he had cut it off months before and she wouldn't leave it alone. He called her to get her to stop leaving notes on his car around town because he goes from restaurant to restaurant to do maintenance work. And he wants that done before his wife finds another note on his car. You're also going to hear that when he tells the police that he didn't make a payphone call, if you didn't do anything wrong, and you know you didn't do anything wrong, you're not even sure what this is about, but you know you didn't do it, it's not hard to want to leave out that I call her from a payphone, particularly when the police have you come in voluntarily and interview you with your wife, and part of the time with your wife in the hall. Because I'll tell you what, after patching up a marriage, after 2 months after an affair, the last thing you want your wife to know is you called her. Even if you say, I just want her to stop leaving notes on my car. Okay? But when it comes down to what you can do, you can say that. You can give them all those excuses. I didn't do it. And they can say, okay, we're looking at it. Based on all the evidence, we don't think that, that you did it either. We certainly don't think we could prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. Dismissed. Or you can ask for a jury trial. That's what makes you the most important part of the trial, because you, nobody else, decide whether Sidney Moorer is guilty of kidnapping. Now, I'm going to tell you, after we go through this trial, that I'm going to be straight with you all the way through it. I'm not a song and dance man. We see on TV and lawyers get a reputation of trying to twist facts and all that. I'm going to give you my solemn vow now. There's none of that going on here. This is going to be straight what happened, straight what the witnesses said, and what does it mean? And we've got an answer for everything because he didn't do this. You are the judges of the fact. The judge is the judge of the law. We didn't have a bench trial where the judge decides whether it's proven beyond a reasonable doubt. We have a jury trial. Only you do that. You are the backstop to somebody being wrongfully convicted for something they didn't do. And I would say that is about as important a role as you can take on. I briefly want to point to something else because it's important as you go into this case that you have a backdrop. This case is 2.5 years old. We have waited, and the prosecutors have too, to this point so that we could get into a room like this with a jury like you and get this behind everybody. Because for 2.5 years, and it started immediately within a week or less after Heather Elvis disappeared, people heard about his name being thrown around as having an affair with her. One thing led to another, social media posts. And I don't know if you ever look at the news online and look at comments. One of the worst things that they allow is for people to leave comments anonymously. Because people said, well, I know this happened, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, what about the fact that we heard she was found in a dumpster, da-da-da, that's supposed to come out this week. And I can go on 150 things or more like that we have heard time and again over all this time, and I just roll my eyes. Because in my mind and in his life, that's what people are thinking. As the judge said, we are all subject to human nature, all of us. And if you hear something enough, it starts to be true. But what has been out there has been distorted. But this thing took on a life of its own, unlike anything I've been involved with before. Like a Category 1 hurricane, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, and it just starts blowing and whipping up. And that's what happened in this case. You cannot imagine the pressure when that's going on that is being put on the Horry County Police Department. Because much of what I said, and I will submit to you a lot of it unfair about the police department from her disappearance up till an arrest, was getting very bad. People wanted heads to roll. Why haven't you found her? What happened? The detectives are back in their conference room, and they got pictures on the wall of possible suspects. And they said, well, you know what? We're going to pick one. So what they did in this case is backwards. This happened in December. In February, they arrest him and charge him with this. They picked him off the wall because they had maybe some more suspicious stuff. They had maybe some more connection. They had slept together in the past. And they arrested him for it. What happens when they do that? All the heat is off of them. Because what happens then? Horry County says, we got the guy, we arrested him. They take their file and their evidence and they give it to the prosecutor's office. They did their job, right? Wrong. But they did it enough to get it off of their plate. They made an arrest to solve a case instead of solve a case and make an arrest. Having faith in the police department, the solicitor's office starts to engage in the same thing. They've got the right person. They're getting now the exact same pressure. So in this case, and they start to work on it, they don't just start to work on it in terms of looking at what they got. They start going out and trying to get stuff. How dangerous is that? Now you've got a person you arrested for a crime, and you got to figure out now how to prove it, because we certainly can't dismiss it. You could, but that's the lesser of two evils. And I submit to you what's going on here today is that they chose the lesser of two evils. We could dismiss this case because there are so many other possibilities that could have happened. It's a weak case. Maybe it's not right to put a guy in trial in such a case and in jeopardy. And take it on the chin with that after all that's been said about the case and all the people pushing this case be prosecuted. Or we can go to trial, put up what we can, and be done with it. And then we went with what we had. The jury saw it differently, and they're out that way. That's what's going on in this case. You're going to see it. The only thing I ask you for is what the judge explained to you is just keep an open mind. Keep an open mind to the possibilities, but also to the questions and the answers, because really in this case, that's the evidence. Please bear in mind, from February 2014 until just last week, they have been working on this case. We've had this date set for a long time. They've been out interviewing people, trying to see what they could say about anything bad about him or anything they could bring in here to use, even as of last week. It was more than a year later before they found themselves a video expert to say that they want to say his truck drove to Peachtree Landing and back. If you and I look at that video, and you'll get to, it's a black blur, but it's certainly a vehicle. But now what they've gone to is, of all the forensic video analysts, and I'm going to ask this guy when he comes, how many there must be in this country? Probably thousands. They had to go all the way to Washington State to find a guy who would do a test and not only say that's a black F-150, or that could be his vehicle, but finally, after holding on to his report for a long time, finally wrote it up, sent it back to him, where he makes the statement, headlight spread pattern analysis. the way that the headlights hit the road at night, no two vehicles in the world have the same headlight spread pattern analysis. So they looked at his and they looked at the video and said, it's his truck. Imagine that. You're going to hear that this guy's college degree is in broadcasting. He was an anchorman on TV for years, then he became a cop, and then he started dabbling and learning about this stuff. Gets paid a lot of money. Gets paid a lot of money. There are no scientific studies. There's no research about headlight spread pattern analysis. This is his baby he cooked up for this case and other people who will pay him around the country. You got to use your common sense. The judge is going to let him testify as an expert based upon his experience. You need to base it upon your experience. Because if he's saying the headlight spread pattern is like a fingerprint or like DNA, which is in essence what he is saying, he would have won the Nobel Prize by now. That's a big deal. Just like the judge told you, common sense. There's a lot of other problems with this stuff, and I'll get to that when I get to question them. But I want to say, like the judge said, because you can't prove you didn't do something doesn't mean that you did do something. There's no evidence where Heather Elvis is today. I'm going to try to ask questions to facilitate the many things that could have happened. During this period of time, Heather was transitional. During this period of time, she was involved with a number of other individuals. During this period of time, she went through periods where she slept in her car because she had troubles at home, and then moved in with a friend for a little while. You need to be convinced of what happened. More importantly, there's two things. One, that Sidney had anything to do with this. And you'd be asking yourself, why would he kidnap her? Why? In 38 years, you just become a kidnapper overnight. And you need to determine that a kidnapping occurred. I will submit to you that the evidence won't even prove that there was a kidnapping. All we know is that her phone pinged at the landing, her car was found there. And that's it. There's no crime scene, there's no struggle, there's no physical evidence. In his truck, in her car, there's no DNA, there's no touch DNA, which that's all it takes to get on a car. There's no hair, there's no blood, there's no semen, there's no physical evidence or direct evidence whatsoever. They have pieced together a circumstantial evidence case. And you can use circumstantial evidence, but it's all circumstantial evidence.
And that's what makes this case difficult. All right, so that was opening statements there. And we're going to watch part 1.
Hey, Geraldi, it's time to state your own.
Okay.
Raise your right hand, place your left hand on the Bible. You solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give the court in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God.
Jessica Cook, C-O-O-K-E.
Ms. Cook, if you don't mind, tell this jury how old you are
I am 37,
and where are you from?
originally Ohio, now Myrtle Beach,
Okay. And where do you currently live?
in Surfside.
Okay. How long have you lived there?
3 months.
And are you married?
I am
Okay. Any kids?
4.
Now, at any point, did you work at Tilted Kilt?
I did.
Okay, and if you don't mind, tell this jury where that is located.
Broadway at the beach.
Okay, and what were your responsibilities you had to do?
As front of the house manager, I did scheduling, I did do some ordering and did table checks and everything for the front of the house.
Okay, and about how long had you worked at the Tilted Kilt as a manager?
About 3 years.
Okay, and if you don't mind, tell this jury while you were there, did you have an occasion to come across Heather Elvis?
Yes.
Okay, and if you don't mind, tell them how.
She was a hostess, so I was her direct supervisor.
Okay, and if you don't mind, was she a full-time employee there?
Y'all let me know too if it's too fast, because a lot of times I listen to things on like super, super, super fast. So I don't want to, you know, I don't want you guys to not be able to understand what's going on. And I think they should just play in order. We're going to say, I don't know. I hope they just play in order. We're going to find out though.
The way they did it, everybody there was labeled as part-time, but she worked full-time hours.
Okay, and so she was there basically almost every day?
Yes.
Okay, and about how long had she worked there?
It was around a year, year and a half.
Okay, and was she the kind of employee that showed up for work every day?
Absolutely.
Okay, and let me ask you this, if she didn't show up, was she gonna let you know?
Absolutely.
Okay, was there ever a time she just didn't show up for work?
No.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this, what were her job responsibilities at Tilted Kilt?
She greeted the customers that came in the door, talked to them, and took them to the tables.
Okay, and at the time when she was working there, was she old enough to serve alcohol?
No.
Okay. So she was under 21.
Correct. She could serve alcohol. She couldn't pour alcohol.
Okay, and if you don't mind, you may have already told me, how long had she worked there?
It was anywhere between a year and a half. I don't remember the exact dates.
Okay, now the defendant in this case, Sidney Moorer, do you know him?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and if you don't mind, tell this jury how you know him.
He was hired as a maintenance man for Tilted Kilt.
Okay, and about how long had he worked there?
6 months.
Okay, and if you don't mind, tell me the kind of hours he worked.
He would come in later at night so that he could do his maintenance while we were closed. So he'd come in anywhere between like 11:30, 12:30, depending on business, and he would leave before the opening manager came in.
Okay, and to your knowledge, did Sidney and Heather know each other?
Yes.
Okay, and if you don't mind, tell this jury a little bit about that relationship.
At first, when Sidney started working there, he met everybody, he was friendly with everybody, and Heather seemed to have a fondness for him. And they started hanging out at the host stand and talking, having conversations.
Okay, and did that relationship progress?
It did.
Okay, and if you don't mind, tell this jury, would he come in and see her on days he wasn't even working?
Yes, he would come in during the day, and he would bring her coffee and bagels, or
Okay,
tea and bagels.
and did that happen on a regular basis?
It did.
Okay, were there any other men bringing her coffee up there?
No,
Were there any other men coming to see her up there?
no.
Okay. Now, let me ask you something. Tell me a little bit about when they were working there, what Heather was like as far as with her phone. Was
With
she-
her phone?
Yes.
They weren't allowed to have their phones, but she always had it. She would get in trouble for having her phone at the host stand.
And if it was ever about to die, would she run to charge it up?
Absolutely.
Okay. And did you ever see the kind of stuff that was on her phone?
Yes, it did.
And if you don't mind, tell this jury what you saw was on her phone.
She needed to charge it, and I had her charge it in the office because we're not allowed to have them. The office is always locked. I was up there doing computer work, and her phone continually went off. So I looked at it to see who it was, and it was Sidney Moorer texting her saying what she was doing.
Okay, so it was text messages back and forth. Okay. Were there multiple messages?
Yes,
Okay. And it was about meeting up or seeing each other?
yes. One in particular that set a red flag in my head was that they were talking about how they had had sex on the back patio of Tilted Kilt.
Now, while they were both at Tilted Kilt, he's bringing her coffee, you've seen these text messages between the two of them. What was your understanding of the relationship?
Heather, okay. I figured they were seeing each other. I didn't have confirmation until I actually read the text messages in the phone.
Okay, so kind of like boyfriend, girlfriend?
Yes,
Okay. Now, at any point, did that relationship change?
it did.
Okay, and if you don't mind, tell the jury about that.
October, two of the girls at Tilted Kilt decided to make a prank phone call and saying that Sydney's wife had found out. And Heather freaked out. She wanted to leave. And sorry, I'm very nervous. Somehow we found out that the girls made the phone call and it wasn't actually, sorry, can't look that way. It wasn't actually Tammy. The employees found out that it was two of the girls. After that point, Heather left and there was no relationship after that.
And during the time of this kind of breakup, what was going on?
Heather was very sad. She wasn't her normal self. She was kind of upset that the relationship was no longer because she actually had feelings. It seems to me that she really had true feelings for him.
And at any point did, when they had broken up, did she appear fearful for any reason?
The day that they played the prank, yes. She wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. She was extremely nervous, jittery. She just wasn't herself.
Had you ever seen her like that before?
No.
Had she ever come to work with any bruises on her?
Yes.
And when did that happen?
End of October, early November?
And was that the same time that they had broken up?
Yes, around the same time.
And had she ever come to work with any bruises before?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Now, during this time when she's working at Tilt and Kill and she's with the defendant, do you ever notice any changes in her physical appearance?
Yes.
Okay, if you don't mind, tell the jury about that.
Okay. I was in charge of the uniforms at Tilted Kilt, so their bra, their shrug, and their kilt were all provided by us. She had to change her bra out from a A cup to a B cup, and then later to a C cup, and also she needed a bigger kilt.
Okay. And what did she think was causing these physical changes?
At first, from the A cup to the B cup, she really wasn't thinking much, just that she gained some weight. But then she started to get concerned when she had to go to the C cup and get the kilt.
Okay. And to your knowledge, did she ever take any kind of pregnancy test?
She took one at Tilted Kilt in the restroom, yes.
Okay. And if you don't mind, did you see the pregnancy test?
I did.
Okay. And tell this jury what it said.
It said error, and I went into the office and looked up why a pregnancy test would say error, and it said that either it was inconclusive or she did not urinate on it enough.
Okay. And so she goes from an A to a C. During this time, she takes the pregnancy test and it reads error.
Correct.
Do you ever see her appearance change and she lose the weight, go
No.
back down to an A cup?
No.
Now, after the breakup, did the defendant continue to work at Tilt and Kill?
Not that I can remember, no.
Okay. Now, tell me a little bit about her demeanor. They've broken up. This time's going on. How did she appear?
She started to come back to being Heather. She started doing her jokes, and you could hear her goofy laugh more often, and just being back to the Heather that we knew and loved.
Now, when was the last time you saw Heather Elvis at Tilt and Kill?
Her last shift was either Sunday or Monday before she disappeared.
Okay. And have you seen her since then?
I have not.
Have you heard from her since then?
I have not.
Okay. Had there ever been a time before this that she just not showed up for work and nobody heard from her?
No, ma'am.
When she never showed back to work, did you or anybody with you ever reach out to anyone to try to find anything out about where she was?
I tried texting her to find out where she was because I don't remember if it was her mom or her dad came up to work asking if anybody had seen her. So I tried texting her and letting her know she needs to let somebody know where she's at, and there was no response.
And did you or anybody else from the Tilt and Kill contact the defendant?
Yes.
And if you don't mind, when did that happen?
That was the morning after, whenever, I don't remember which parent it was, came to the restaurant asking if anybody had come or if anybody had seen her. And Dennis Hart had called them that morning.
Objection to Dennis Hart's testimony.
Sustained objection.
One of the other managers.
Did you ever hear what the defendant said?
All I heard was no.
Now, during this time she was working at Tilt and Kill, did you ever see her car?
Yes,
Okay. And what kind of car was it, just in general?
it was green, either like an Intrepid type vehicle.
Okay. And had you ever seen her be without her car for a ride or anything else?
Not that I can recall, no.
Okay. Now, did you ever see the defendant's truck when he worked at Tilt and Kill?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what color was his truck?
It was white.
So the last time when he was up at Tilted Kilt working end of October, beginning of November, he had a white truck.
Yes, ma'am.
Had you ever seen it in a black truck?
No, ma'am.
One question I forgot to ask you, Ms. Cook. During the time the breakup happened between the defendant and the victim, Heather Elvis, did you ever see any pictures on her phone from the defendant?
Yes, ma'am.
And if you don't mind, tell this jury what you saw.
Just one second. That's good.
That is irrelevant, Your Honor, and it's also prejudicial.
Relevant. I don't prove objection, it's relevant. Prejudicial, that's generally what evidence is.
It's more prejudicial than probative of any element.
I will prove objection. Allow-
If you don't mind, tell this jury the picture you saw on the phone during that time frame.
It was a picture of Sidney Moorer performing oral sex on his wife.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross.
Yes, sir. How do you know the oral sex picture was his wife?
That is a good question. I did not see it for her face.
Huh?
That is a good question. I did not see her face.
Did you clearly see his?
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned in your statement that you're aware of one of Heather's prior boyfriends, Jeremy. Do
Yes,
you know Jeremy?
not very well, no.
Okay. In regards to Dennis Hart,
Yes, sir.
you know Dennis, right?
Yes, sir.
Did you see evidence of a relationship between the two of them?
No.
So if they had a romantic relationship, you would not know about it?
No.
Okay. You said in your statement that Heather was sleeping in a car.
Yes, sir.
What period of time was that?
Month-wise or lengthwise, sir?
Just length of how long?
I knew probably a few days.
Okay. Can you tell me what days those were?
No, sir.
Can you give me an estimated guess of when that would have been?
I honestly don't recall, sir.
Do you know what month it was?
It was probably springtime.
So it wasn't surrounding, you're saying it wasn't surrounding prior to her going to Warrelman's house to live in?
It was prior to that.
Okay, so that was in December, so it wouldn't have been the springtime.
It was the springtime of 2013.
Okay. So you're saying she was sleeping in her car from the spring all the way up?
Oh, no. I knew,
You know she was sleeping in her car prior to moving in with Warrelman?
correct.
She was?
In the springtime, she had slept in her car. I found out about that, and she had come and stayed with me for a few days. After that, I didn't know where she was staying. I knew that she was not staying in her car.
So you do not know whether she was sleeping in her car in November or December?
I do not know that, no, sir.
Have you ever talked to Warrelman about that?
Not that subject, no.
Do you know why she was sleeping in the car?
I know that she had argument at home and wasn't there. That's all I know.
Home being like a family home?
Correct.
Okay. Now, in regards to, the only thing that you mentioned about being fearful was you said that she was fearful because all the girls at work played a prank on her.
Right.
Right? And that prank was that they came up with a scheme
Excuse me.
to call and pretend to be Sidney's wife,
Correct.
and that made her fearful.
Correct.
Okay. And then when you, in your statement, said that you looked at her phone once and saw 95 missed calls, you recall that statement?
Yes, sir.
Okay, those 95 missed calls were not from Sidney.
She, when it
I'm
came,
not asking you
I'm
who
sorry.
they're from, but I'm asking you, they were
Correct.
from Sidney.
Correct, sir.
Those 95 missed calls were from somebody else.
Correct.
And it was 95 missed calls in a relatively short period of time.
Correct.
And she kept asking questions about the date of the breakup. What was the date of the breakup?
It was, I want to say it was mid to late October.
Do you know the reason for that breakup?
Honestly, no, sir.
Just give me 1 second. please.
Yes, sir.
the picture that was sent with oral sex, you don't know for certain that was sent, Sidney or the other person?
No.
Now, regarding the black eye that she had, did you get any knowledge as a supervisor of your people in regards to how that occurred?
She had given me 2 stories. One was that when she opened her door, she hit her eye with her door. And then the other one was that she had gotten jumped in the Walmart parking lot.
Okay. Do you recall her saying she had to stab somebody and use her knife in that instance?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Did she go into detail about stabbing somebody or just?
No.
Just general stabbing?
General.
That's all I have for this week.
Redirect.
Sure.
Look, if you don't mind, tell this jury who those 95 calls were from.
The name that came up on the phone was Crazy Bitch.
And do you know who that was for? Was she a name, Crazy Bitch?
Tammy Moore,
Okay, who was Tammy Moore?
the defendant's wife.
Okay, and he asked you a question about being fearful.
Yes.
Tell this jury what Heather Elvis was afraid of.
She was afraid of Mrs. Moore coming to the restaurant,
Okay, when you say
That
Mrs.
day.
Moore, who do you mean?
the defendant's wife.
Okay, and had she ever been fearful like that before?
I had never seen her like that, no.
And let me ask you this, Mr. Tressler just asked you about some stories about the bruise.
Mhm.
If you don't mind, tell this jury why she was telling those.
A lot of the girls at work were giving her a hard time about the whole situation, so she's trying to kind of defuse a bomb, so to say, and trying to get ahead of them making fun or anything of her.
And what situation are you referring to?
Just the black eye, she was trying to get a story out so that nobody would ask questions.
Okay, and what were the girls that were giving her a hard time about?
Just the whole situation, her seeing a married man, things like that.
Because at the time Sidney was married?
Correct.
No further questions.
Recross.
When you say that she was telling you those 2 stories to diffuse a situation,
Yes, sir.
to explain her black eye so they make fun of her, I mean, that's your take on it, right? I mean, that's what you're speculating as to why she would do that.
Correct, sir.
You only know the 2 stories she told you.
Correct, sir.
She may come down, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Call you next witness, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. This time the state calls Jody Davenport.
Please raise your right hand. Place your left hand on the Bible. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give court in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Just give us state your full name and spell your last name.
Jody Lynn Davenport, Davenport.
And if you don't mind, Ms. Davenport, tell this jury about how old you are
27,
and where are you from?
Conway, South Carolina.
And you still live in Conway?
Yes,
And you married with kids?
yes.
Okay. And if you don't mind, where are you currently working?
Lincoln Park Bar and Grill.
Okay. And had you ever worked at Tilted Kilt?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And if you don't mind, tell this jury where the Tilted Kilt is.
Broadway at the beach, located in Myrtle Beach.
Okay. And if you don't mind, what is the Tilted Kilt?
It was a restaurant, basically a themed restaurant. We wore, costumes as uniforms.
Okay. And what were your responsibilities when you were working there?
A server.
Okay. And about how long did you work there?
I worked there about 2 years total.
Okay. And while you worked there, did you have an occasion to come across Heather Elvis?
Yes, ma'am.
And if you don't mind, tell this jury how you met Heather Elvis.
She was already there when I started working there. I think we worked together about a year and a half, I would say.
Okay. And about how, was she a server?
She was a hostess.
Okay. And was she old enough to serve alcohol?
She was old enough to serve, not pour.
Okay. Because you gotta be 21.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And she was not yet 21.
No.
Okay. And while y'all were together, tell this jury a little bit about y'all's relationship. Were you friends, enemies, hang out buddies?
We were friends. I have a family, so I don't really do much going out anymore. And so we didn't really hang out much outside of work, but we were friends at work.
Okay. So she was one of those people when you were at work, you would hang out, but not outside of work.
Yes.
Okay. Now, while you were there, did you meet the defendant?
Yes.
Okay, if you don't mind, tell this jury how you met him.
He was doing maintenance work for us and he would come in periodically.
Okay, and when did he work?
I don't really remember exactly times.
Okay, mostly during the day or at night?
I would say during the day.
Okay, and if you don't mind, did Heather and the defendant know each other while they both worked at Tilted Kills?
Yes.
Okay, if you don't mind, tell this jury a little bit about their relationship.
I did see him come in a few times to bring her things like bagels or coffee.
Okay, and did they seem to talk a lot?
Yes.
Would he come see her when he wasn't there?
Yes.
I'm sorry, when he wasn't working?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now, were there any other men bring her coffee?
No.
Did she ever talk to you about any other men?
No.
Did any other men come and see her while she was at the job?
No.
Now, if you don't mind, was there a time when Heather and the defendant's relationship changed?
Yes.
Okay, if you don't mind, tell this jury about that.
Whenever it ended.
Yes.
Okay. It was around the end of October.
And what went on when it ended?
She started getting harassing phone calls while she was at work.
Okay, and did you ever see any pictures on her phone?
I did.
And if you don't mind, tell this jury what you saw a picture of.
It was a picture of Sidney and his wife in some sexual positions.
Now, during the time of this breakup, and she's getting these pictures, and she's getting all these phone calls, how did she appear? Was she happy, sad, fearful?
She looked like a ghost. She looked paranoid, scared.
Had you ever seen her like that before?
No.
Now, during this time, did she ever come in with any bumps or bruises?
I did see her come in with a black eye.
Had you ever seen her come in like that before?
No.
Had you ever even seen her acting paranoid or anything like that before?
No, she was always happy and bubbly.
Now, after they broke up, did she continued to work at the Tilted Kill?
Yes.
Now, tell me a little bit about that. Was she somebody that worked regularly?
Yes.
Okay, and if she wasn't gonna be there, did she call?
Yes.
Okay. Were there ever long periods of time when she didn't work?
No.
Okay. Now, how about the defendant? Did he continue to work at the Tilted Kill after they ended that relationship?
I do not remember seeing him in there at all after that.
Okay. So after that, he was no longer coming through the Tilted Kill.
No, ma'am.
Okay, but she continued to work.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, during that time frame, did you notice any changes in her physical appearance?
Yes, ma'am.
If you don't mind, tell the jury about that.
She looked like she was putting some weight in our cheeks, and I remember she did have to go up a couple of bra sizes in our uniform because that was part of the uniform. And she was putting on weight, around the hip area and her belly.
Okay, and what did you think was going on?
I thought she was pregnant.
Okay. Do you know whether or not she ever took a pregnancy test?
Yes, ma'am.
And did she?
Yes.
Did you see the test?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did it say?
It said error. It had the words written out.
Now, during the time she continued to work at the Tilted Kill, did she ever lose the weight?
I don't remember ever seeing her lose that.
Now, as time went on and she continues to work at the Tilted Kill, they broke it up. Tell this jury a little bit about her demeanor.
It got increasingly better.
Now, when was the last time you saw her?
I want to believe it was the Monday before she went missing. We worked together.
Okay, and have you seen her since then?
No, ma'am.
And have you talked to her since then?
No, ma'am.
Now, did you know what kind of car she drove?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what kind of car?
I don't remember the make and model, and it was a 4-door. She had an Elvis sticker on the back of it, like Elvis Presley.
Okay. And had you ever seen the defendant's truck when he worked for Tilted Kill?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and if you don't mind, what color truck did he drive?
White.
Had you ever seen him in a black truck?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, was that the answer?
No.
Now, at the time this was going on, do you know whether or not the defendant was married?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, was he?
Yes.
Okay, and was Heather during this time frame involved with anybody else?
No.
Okay, now, when this was going on, how were the other waitresses and staff at Tilted Kill? Were they nice to her? Did they know what was going on?
Everybody knew what was going on, and there were girls that were picking on her about it, and she was embarrassed.
And did everybody else know that Sidney was married?
Yes.
And did anybody ever say anything to her about their relationship since he was married?
Yes.
And what kind of things would they say?
Basically taunting her about it.
when you were at work and Heather was at work, she's a young girl. Tell me a little bit about her habits with her cell phone. Was she somebody that never looked at it, or was she somebody you couldn't touch her without?
She always had her cell phone.
Different questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Here with Mr. Davenport.
Were you a part of the scam with the other girls making the prank calls to her? Were you
No,
aware
sir.
that took place?
No, sir.
Did you learn that took place?
Yes, sir.
That you had nothing to do with that?
No, sir.
How do you know that Heather was not involved with anybody else at the time that she was involved with Sidney Moorer?
She wasn't that I was aware of.
So if she was, you wouldn't know.
No, sir.
I mean, you weren't with her all the time.
No, sir.
And when you say fearful when all this is going on, is it safe to say, Ms. Thomas, that she seemed like she's fearful of the wife being in a relationship with an 18-year older man than her that was married? Is she fearful about the wife, particularly after the scam that the wife called her?
I would just say fearful in general. I'm not sure, sir.
Fearful of anything?
That was her demeanor.
Did you ever ask her why she's fearful?
We talked about it a little bit.
Was she fearful of running into his wife? Would you say?
Yes.
Read rest.
Different question.
Thank you, take that down. All right, let's take about a 10-minute break.
One more, Judge.
Huh?
You want to stop one more to end up?
Well, I'm gonna take about a 10-minute break. Jury, you can sit here for more for this lady, you can pack for 3 o'clock. 3:30. So let's take about a 10-minute break. You're not beginning deliberation. We do Mr. Gaines. It's like, they retired you.
And there he goes. Ugh. Thinking he looks so cute. Little fucker. Sorry. I'm so loud. If you don't mind. Yeah, taunted at work. Like, it's ridiculous.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're ready to continue. Let's make our next witness.
Thank you, Judge. The next witness is going to be Megan Bonbert.
Can you touch your right hand? Touch your left hand on the Bible. You solemnly swear or affirm that evidence you're about to give in court in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Just look at my phone, state your full name and spell your last name.
Megan Bonbert, Bonfert.
And Megan, if you don't mind, tell the jury how old you are
25,
and where are you from?
California originally,
Okay. And how long have you been in Horry County?
6 years.
And are you married with kids?
No.
And where do you currently live?
Conway,
Okay. And where do you work?
Lincoln Park.
Okay. And have you ever worked at Tilted Kilt?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And where is Tilted Kilt located?
Broadway at the beach.
And about how long did you work there?
3.5 years.
Okay. And what were your responsibilities?
I was a server.
Okay, and did you know, Heather Elvis while you worked there?
Yes, ma'am.
And how did you know her?
Through work.
And, was she somebody that had worked there for some time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And was she one that worked basically every day?
Yes, ma'am.
And, do you know the defendant?
Yes, ma'am.
And how do you know him?
Through work.
Okay. And what did he do at Tilton Jail?
Maintenance.
Now, to your knowledge, did the victim in this case, Heather Elvis, know Sidney?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And if you don't mind telling the story a little bit about that.
They were involved in a sexual relationship.
Okay. And, during that time, did he ever come see her?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And, would he come see her when he was not working?
Yes, ma'am.
Were there any other guys coming to see her?
No, ma'am.
And at that time, when you and her both worked there, were y'all friends?
Yes, ma'am.
And did y'all talk about, what's going on in your life, that kind of stuff?
All the time.
Okay. And did she talk to you at that time about any other guy?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and was she seeing any other guy?
No, ma'am.
At some point, did that relationship between Heather and this defendant, did it end?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And if you don't mind, tell the story about what went on when that relationship ended.
She got a lot of nasty text messages and became very fearful, I would say. She just wasn't Heather. She was normally a bubbly, outgoing person, and she became the complete opposite.
And had you ever seen her like that before?
No, ma'am.
And did you see any of the messages or any pictures on her phone that was being sent to her during that time frame?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did you see?
I saw a sexual picture of Sidney smiling in between his wife's legs.
And did you see his face in the picture?
Yes. The only thing I really remember about the picture is his smile.
And that was sent to her during the time that relationship had ended?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, during the time that this relationship was going on between the victim and the defendant, did you notice any physical changes in her?
Ma'am.
As far as appearance?
Um,
Any changes?
I mean, she had mentioned that she was gaining a little bit of weight, could fit into her jeans, and that she had gone up a few bra sizes.
And what did you think was going on?
Well, I questioned her and asked her if she was pregnant.
And do you know if she ever took a pregnancy test?
I heard of the pregnancy test and never saw it.
Now, during the time that you knew her, after this relationship ended, did she ever go back to being her old self?
Closer towards December, I would say she kind of dropped the whole situation and was talking about getting her stuff to go back to hair school, and she was getting a new job, and she was, seeing other people.
So as time moved on, she continued to work at the children's show.
Yes, ma'am.
And as time moved on, she kind of got more and more back to her old self.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, did the defendant continue to work at children's show?
No, ma'am.
When was the last time you saw Heather Ellis?
December 10th at our Christmas party.
And have you seen or talked to her since then?
No, ma'am.
Was she scheduled to come into work since then?
Yes, ma'am.
Did she come into work?
No, ma'am.
And how do you know that?
I sat and waited to see if she would show up to work, and when she didn't show up, I kind of knew something was wrong.
And was she somebody that just wouldn't show up to work?
No.
And when she didn't show up, what did you think?
Something was wrong because Heather was always at work or 30 minutes early if that.
Now, during the time you were friends with Heather, was she somebody that would just not have contact with people or leave and not show up for work?
No.
And how about with her phone? What was her habits with her phone?
It was a lifeline.
And did you ever see her car?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever see the inside of it?
Yes, ma'am.
How'd it look?
Like a normal girl's car, you throw everything in the back seat.
So basically everything in there.
Yes.
Now, when the defendant worked at Tilted Hill, did you ever see what kind of truck he drove?
All I know is a white truck with the logo on the side.
So the last time you saw him before he stopped working at Tilted Hill, he drove a white truck.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever see him in a black truck?
No, ma'am.
Now, earlier, Mr. Truslow, the defense attorney in this case, brought up a guy named Jeremy. Do you know him?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now did him and Heather ever date?
Yes, ma'am.
And when was that?
I want to say around the beginning of when she started working at Tilted Kill. That's actually how we became friends,
Okay,
is we had that mutual person.
okay. Now, when she was in a relationship with the defendant, was that relationship with that Jeremy guy already over?
Yes, on over.
And was he dating somebody else as well?
Jeremy,
Yes.
I'm not completely sure.
Okay. And were they continuing to have contact when she was in a relationship with the defendant?
Not that I was aware of.
Okay. So that relationship had ended and she had moved on and he had moved on.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did she talk about even talk about any other guys when she was dating the defendant?
No, ma'am.
During this time frame of, when her and the defendant were dating up until December, do you know of anybody else she was involved in a relationship with?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Do you know anybody else that she was fearful of at that time?
Tammy,
Objection to the form of question on stage.
I'll rephrase, Your Honor.
Okay.
Was there ever a time after this breakup that she appeared fearful?
yes, ma'am.
And when was that?
When she was receiving the phone calls from Tammy.
Okay. And once she moved on from that, was she involved in any kind of relationship with anybody else?
No, ma'am.
And was anybody else calling the Tilted Kill threatening her?
No, ma'am.
Did you see any other pictures on her phone of anything other than the one that that defendant had sent her?
No, ma'am.
Now, during the time she worked at Tilted Kill, did she ever come in with any bruises or knocks or bangs?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And if you don't mind, I know it's been 2 years ago, but around what time frame as far as when she was dating the defendant, before then or after then, that she showed up with these bruises?
After.
And had she ever showed up to work before with any bruises or bumps?
No, ma'am.
And before all this took place, did she ever appear fearful or paranoid or worried about anything?
No.
No further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Cross it down.
Ms. Bonbert, have you had meetings with prosecutors prior to trial?
Yes, sir.
When was that?
Week or so ago?
Okay. And at that meeting, did you go through what your testimony was going to be here today?
Sir?
Did you go through what your testimony was going to be here today?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because it's one of the other ladies, I'm not sure which one, who's testified this morning, and I'll give you the names if you need them, but you work at Lincoln Park. One of the other ladies works there too?
Yes, sir.
Which one is that?
Jessica?
Yes, Jessica Cook.
Yes.
So you work with her now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know Heather Elvis's parents?
Yes.
What kind of contact have you had with them within the last 6 months?
No contact besides prayer vigils.
Okay. So do you see them at the prayer vigils?
Yes.
Have you been to most of the prayer vigils over the years?
Some.
Okay. When's the last one you went to?
4 or 5 months ago.
Okay, you didn't go to the last one?
No, sir.
Your statement indicates that you stated that Heather initiated this relationship. Stated that first time she saw him, she said, "I want to jump his bones."
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then I think you already testified that she had been getting threatened one morning with 95 calls, as it was put, from a Tammy.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
correct? And not Sidney, but Tammy.
Well, it was listed as crazy bitch.
Okay. Go ahead. We're assuming, I mean, in other words, crazy bitch would be a name that somebody could associate in their phone with somebody.
Yes, sir.
So when that person called, it would show up crazy bitch.
Yes, sir.
You're testifying you understood crazy bitch to be Tammy, Sidney's wife.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, when you first asked, you were sure she was not seeing anybody this time. And your statement says that you did have knowledge that Heather dated Jeremy Spencer on and off and even lived with him for a short period of time.
Yes, sir. Previous to.
Okay. How previous?
I would say her relationship with him ended in about January.
Okay. And you feel comfortable to say that you know for a fact that during October, November, December, that Heather had no contact with Jeremy?
Yes.
How do you know that?
because it was cut off. She never spoke about him.
Right.
It was
I'm
never
not
done.
asking if you spoke about him. Do you know for a fact whether she had contact with him?
I do not know for a fact, no.
Okay. Because we know that Heather was having contact in a relationship with a married man, which is kind of secretive, correct?
Yes,
Okay. So it's very possible that Heather could have, from time to time, talked with, text with, or met with Jeremy during that time, and you would not know about it.
yes,
And would it surprise you to learn that, in fact, would you be surprised, in fact, you learned throughout this trial that she did, in fact, run into Jeremy during that time period?
I would be surprised.
Do you know Bree Warrelman?
Yes,
Okay. If, based upon your relationship with Bree, if you learned from her that she, with Heather, ran into Jeremy, would you believe Bree?
yes,
She wouldn't make that up, would she?
no,
In terms of that picture, that was also sent by the wife, correct? Your understanding?
from my understanding.
And oral sex, Sidney Moorer between the wife's legs. And I guess the assumption is that's the wife,
Yes,
right? You said that the day that she didn't show up for work, that you basically were sitting waiting on her and you knew that something was wrong, correct?
yes, sir.
Are there any other, the ladies that you work with, that you sit and wait to see if they come in on time?
No, sir.
And get worried about? It was just her?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was that because of the wife threats or just her in general?
Well, it's because of us realizing that she was missing.
When did you realize it?
When we got a phone call looking for her,
So you got a phone call looking for her before she was supposed to be at work?
a prior shift.
Okay. And then you said that I'm sorry, Heather Ellis had no relationships after that with anyone.
No, sir.
And again, I would ask you, to your knowledge, that's correct.
Yes, sir.
She could have, and you may not know about it, correct?
She could have.
In fact, the night that she went missing, she was on a date with a different person, correct?
Yes, sir.
So she was seeing somebody else during that time period.
Yes, sir.
And the black eye was after the breakup with Sidney Moorer?
Yes, sir.
And in your statement, you indicated that she told you she was jumped and had to pull out a knife to defend herself.
Yes, sir.
Where did she tell you that? At work?
Yes, sir.
Did you encourage her to report that to the police? Did she tell you she stabbed somebody? Had
Yes, sir.
stabbed somebody? Huh?
Yes, sir.
Did she ever tell you who she stabbed?
No, sir.
Did you have any knowledge whatsoever or evidence, anything that would lead you to believe that Dennis Hart had a fondness for her?
No, sir.
Huh?
No, sir.
So if there were text messages between the two of them that were romantic in nature, you would be very surprised.
Yes.
What did you mean that, in your statement, when you say that Heather told you she felt like the outcast in her family?
She felt like an outcast.
I mean, in what respect? She just said, I felt like an outcast, or did she explain that?
The rebel was out of cause.
And how do you take that to mean? I mean, I know that saying what it means, but do you want to expound on that at all, being a rebel without a cause? I mean, how would you explain Heather as a rebel without a cause?
Your Honor, is he asking her what?
What's okay?
I'm sorry, I guess I'm confused.
Well, witness can ask the question. She doesn't understand. She can ask.
So he-
I don't understand.
Overruled.
What meaning did you give that, if any, in her referring to herself as a rebel without a cause?
A typical teenage girl.
When she was 20?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and you think a typical teenage girl is an outcast in her family?
Not necessarily an outcast, but
Okay. Would you describe her sister as an outcast in the family or a rebel without a cause, Morgan?
no, sir.
You also said in your statement that Heather told you that she had frequently been Peachtree Landing with her sister Morgan.
She had mentioned it a few times, yes.
How many they broke?
Can we read this?
Just a couple, Your Honor.
Sure.
Megan, if you don't mind, what am I showing you?
The statement,
Okay, and who wrote it?
myself,
And if you don't mind, tell this jury how many pages it is.
4,
Okay. And if you don't mind, tell the jury when you wrote that statement.
February 5th, 2014.
February 5th of 2014.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And have you seen that statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And is anything you told this jury today different than what you wrote in that statement in February of 2014?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And had you ever met with me or anybody else from the solicitor's office or police department before you wrote that statement?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And what's in that statement is what you're telling us here today.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, Mr. Truxell, I'll ask you some questions about what Heather said about an altercation that had taken place during the time her and the defendant broke up. Do you remember that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Why would she tell him that?
I believe it was because she was getting a lot of conflict with other girls saying that she was getting what she deserved by sleeping with a married man.
And what was this conflict about from the other girls?
A lot of them causing her drama. I mean, somebody wrote on one of the blackboards to stay away from the maintenance man, he's married, and she was a little upset over it.
And so the majority of the girls were giving her a hard time because he was married.
Yes, ma'am.
Good for the question, John.
Read Ross.
What was it that was written on the blackboard?
To stay away from or stop fucking the maintenance man, he's married.
And you have a
Thanks.
quote in your statements, hey, ladies, please stop the maintenance man is married.
Yes, sir.
That's what you wrote, hey, ladies, please stop. Okay, and that was written on blackboard at Heather's work
Yes.
by either a supervisor or a coworker or somebody that she worked with.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You may come down. You wish this witness to be excused, solicitor?
Good for the question, John.
You wish the witness to be excused?
Yes, please.
You're free to leave, too. Let's give him time, we'll go ahead and, you said the next witness may be 30 to 40 minutes.
I believe so.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I'm gonna let you go for tonight. One of the things I'd like you to do tomorrow, I'd like you to be back at 9:30. And I'd like you to talk among yourselves. One thing, we all have place, and you do, everybody that works here has needs outside of this courthouse. But I'm willing to work a little longer. Typically, we work from 5 to 5:30, but if you're willing to work a little longer, keep this case moving, I'm willing to do that, but I really prefer to you, as to what length of time you're willing to do. If y'all decide you won't stop judge between 5 and 5:30, to the extent I can honor that, I'll do it. Sometimes it depends on the witnesses. If we're at a point where we need to finish a witness, we try to do that. Sometimes, just like today, if I have an idea the witness may be 30 to 45 minutes, I'm confident to generally start that. Although we have a little bit of time, but I'd rather to do that. But if you'll give me some framework, I would be very helpful to me in planning, and I thank you. Please remember that you're not at liberty, of course, to talk among yourselves or talk outside the courtroom with anyone. Again, you don't need any research. And when you go home tonight, if there's somebody there, I would imagine the first question is going to be, what are you doing? What's this case tonight? That would be pretty normal. Tell them you can't talk about it, because if you did, you will have commenced your individual deliberations by discussing the case. So you would violate your oath. And so I would ask you, please not, you can talk about it when you finish if you wish, and that'll be up to you. Also, I would remind you, please, if you're watching news and you see something coming on about the Moorer trial, turn it off. Because I'm going to ask you tomorrow morning, I'm going to ask you to take a look, you have honored the court's instruction by not talking about this among yourselves, not doing any use of gas about it, or allowing anybody to talk to you about it. And so that oath is very significant, as you know. So thank you very much for your attention and your patience today. Hope you have a good evening. I'll see you at 9:30 in the morning. Thank you. I'm directed to you, jury. And you don't need to call any number. I had jurors that called the numbers and said I didn't need to report, and you don't need to do that. You come direct. Thank you. Are you thinking of state?
No, Your Honor, I'm at a distance. What time did you tell the jury to come back?
9:30.
9:30?
Yeah, I'd like to have us here a little before that. Let me see y'all just for a second. Nice to meet you. Thank you, Terry. Nice evening. You have a copy. This one done. Right. Y'all approach, please. There's number one. Ladies and gentlemen, I have what's course exhibit number one is a note from Ms. Archer. I'm going to ask you to return to your jury room. Ms. Archer, I'm going to ask that you not return to the jury room. You can stay in the hall. I'll be out for some more. Oh, thank you very much. Let me ask you all this too. That's not summarized. Or can we just summarize? Which one? What you call one? Summarize, let you all in. Right, let's go talk with BDs for a few moments.
She's good, Jersey.
Those things have Nope.
I didn't get yours.
Good morning, ladies. Thank you very much. I hope you had a good evening. We're ready to continue that matter. The matter we started yesterday. First, let me ask you this. Each of you solemnly swear or affirm that you have honored the court's instruction in every respect, not spoken with anyone, allowed anyone to talk with you, not reviewed any newspaper accounts or watched any television news reports on this trial. Make that commitment. Say, I do. I do. Any member of the jury panel will make that commitment. Thank you very much again. Appreciate it so much. Question has been that there's persons, or maybe all, I don't know, it doesn't matter, who want to take notes. We have no paper, we'll make it available to you. And every judge has a different perspective on note taking. Mine is kind of a quasi, and let me just share with you. I don't have any problem. They're your notes, and they will remain here. Close the day, you'll give them to the bailiff, and the bailiff then will return them to you. So if you are taking, put your name on the first page so that you know that they're yours. But I would hasten to add as I mentioned to you, our court reporter has a responsibility of keeping record of probation. That's her. And at the end of the trial, during the deliberations, we have the ability to replay that testimony. Now, let me just say this. I've had jurors taking notes during trial. That's fine. And I had this experience about a year and a half ago, and I thought, wow, that might be the best time to take notes. The jury begun deliberations, and they couldn't agree on what the witness said or didn't say. They asked for note pads then, so that they could take down what they heard. And the reason I thought it was significant is this. We all know that body language speaks loudly. And if you're taking notes, everybody has a different ability to take notes. If you happen to be looking down, there may have been a facial expression, there may be something that was a trigger for you, and some are assessing the credibility and believability. So that's my caution to you about note taking. But if anybody does want notes, please raise your hand. We'll make the notes available. For any other change, let us know, and we'll be happy to do that. But please know that you do have the ability to be here. Thank you so much. Have you discussed about the time, how long you want to go? What is that? Have you selected the presiding juror? Yeah, you don't have to. I'm just okay. Anyway, what's the time?
Well, the discussion earlier was that either from 8 to 8:30 till 5 or 5:30.
So you will start at 8? Right?
Either 8 to 8:30, somewhere there, and then finish by 5:30.
Probably, what time do y'all normally come to work? All right. Probably 8:45, maybe would be the best time, because obviously clerks come at 8 o'clock and they've got work that they have to do before you get here. So I understand that. That's not uncommon. When I practice law, I guarantee you I went to work before 8 o'clock. But I understand that there are other persons that have jobs and we have to respect their time as well. But 5:30 is about, I heard 5 or 5:30 is a good stopping point. So that's fine. Why don't we try this? Let's start at 9 o'clock. And that'll get us, that's not an imposition to anyone to come to be here before 9 o'clock. Okay, good. Well, tomorrow we will start at 9 and we'll go to 5:30. Okay. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And I ask you now to give your attention to the next witness list. Good morning. You may call your next witness, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. State call Mr. Stephen Geraldi to the stand.
Okay. See, I'm an advocate for you. Advocate for you. You're welcome.
So please raise your right hand. Place your left hand on the Bible. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give the court in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
My name is Stefano Geraldi, Schiraldi.
Good morning, Mr. Geraldi. Where do you currently live?
Chicago, Illinois.
How long have you lived in Chicago?
Since October.
October of what year?
2015.
That's a little over about 9 months ago.
Yes.
Where'd you move from when you went to Chicago?
I was living in Murrells Inlet, South Carolina.
Murrells Inlet, that's in Horry County, right?
Yes.
Do you have any family that still lives in Murrells Inlet?
Yes, my mom, my younger brother, and an aunt.
When you were last living in Horry County, who all did you live with?
My mom and my brother.
How many brothers or sisters do you have in total?
I have 2 brothers, a half-sister, and 2 stepsisters.
How old's your oldest brother?
25.
And where does he live?
Chicago with me.
And how old's your younger brother?
He's 20.
And where does he live?
He still lives with our mom.
And was that the brother that was living with your mom when you were living there as well?
Yes.
Before you moved to Chicago, how long had you lived in Horry County?
Roughly 8 years.
Did you attend high school in Horry County?
Yes, I went to St. James High School.
Did you graduate?
In 2010.
After high school, what'd you do?
I worked in and out of a couple different restaurants.
What restaurants did you work at?
Wicked Tuna, down in Murrells Inlet, Gulfstream Cafe in Garden City.
In December of 2013, where were you working?
At Wicked Tuna.
And what was your job at Wicked Tuna?
I was a sauté cook.
And didn't ask you this, but what kind of restaurant is Wicked Tuna?
It's an upscale seafood restaurant.
Mr. Geraldi, do you know Heather Elvis, or did you know Heather Elvis?
Yes.
When did you first meet her?
Unofficially in high school, just from seeing her around. Officially meeting her was on December 17th, I believe, when we had our first date.
Okay. Now in high school, were you and Heather in the same grade?
No, she was a grade below me.
Did you know her well in high school?
No, not at all.
How did you come to get in contact with her after high school?
We followed each other on Instagram and just got to talking and commenting on one of her pictures.
Was it common for you to follow several people from high school on Instagram?
Yes.
Do you remember when you started following Heather Elvis?
I don't remember.
When you commented on her picture on Instagram, how long did y'all communicate before you met her in person?
Maybe 3 or 4 days.
Now you mentioned December 17th. Did you have a chance to go on a date with Heather Elvis on that day? Excuse me.
Yes, I did.
Whose idea was it to go on the date?
It was mine.
Was this date a romantic date?
Yes.
Was this the first time that you had gone on a date with Heather Elvis?
Yes.
Now, when you went on this date with her, did you pick her up at her apartment? Did she meet you at your house, or did y'all meet somewhere? How did you come to get together?
I picked her up from her apartment.
As best you can recall, where was Heather's apartment located?
Near the River Oaks golf course off of 501 by the Bob Evans and Midas and all of that.
Do you recall what time of day or night it was that you arrived at Heather Elvis's apartment for the date?
Right around 7 p.m.
At that time, did you go in the apartment?
No, I just met her at the door.
Did you have a chance? So you didn't have a chance to go in the apartment at that point?
No, not before the date.
Okay. Did you see anything odd or suspicious about the apartment from what little bit you could see?
No.
Now, Mr. Geraldi, who drove on that date?
I did.
And what did you drive?
A 98 Ford Ranger.
What color was your truck?
It's a light blue, kind of grayish.
How many doors did it have?
2.
Was there any sort of toolbox or anything shiny in the back?
No.
How was your truck compared to the size of a Ford F-150?
Probably about half the size.
Now, Mr. Geraldi, where did you and Heather go on this date?
We started off having dinner at Banditos, which is a Spanish restaurant off of Ocean Boulevard near the Skywheel.
Do you recall if you had any alcohol with dinner that night?
I did not.
Do you recall if Heather had any alcohol with dinner that night?
She did not.
How was Heather acting towards you on the date?
Friendly. She was happy.
Did she seem distracted?
No, not at all.
Did you have any reason to believe she was in despair or upset?
No.
How long did y'all stay at Banditos?
An hour and a half, give or take.
And after Banditos, where'd you go after that?
We just drove around talking for a little while, heading south, and ended up in the Inlet Square Mall parking lot where I taught her how to drive my truck, which had a manual transmission.
Yeah. Based on your conversations with Heather Elvis, did you think she knew how to drive a stick?
She did not. She said that a couple of her friends had tried to teach her before, but she could never get the hang of it.
How crowded was the parking lot when y'all were there?
It was empty.
Was the mall open?
No, it was closed.
It was after the mall closed. Let me show you. Please, for the record, if I can show the council what the mark presentation of the state one.
Okay.
You're our commissioner, first witness.
Right.
Mr. Geraldi, I just handed you what the mark for identification purposes state exhibit number 1. Do you recognize that photograph?
Yes, it's the photograph that I took of Heather while she was driving my truck.
Who asked you to take that photo?
She asked me to take it.
Okay. Is it a fair and accurate representation of Heather Elvis driving your truck that night?
Yes.
Your Honor, I tender in the evidence states exhibit number 1.
Without objection, this
And I would ask to publish to the jury.
ladies and gentlemen, while we're doing that, I'll tell you, it's not uncommon. You're going to trial this when evidence is admitted. It will be passed. You can look at it. But please understand, anything that's admitted will accompany you to your jury, so you'll have a chance to look at it in great depth and detail later.
Mr. Geraldi, how did Heather do driving your truck?
She did pretty well. She picked it up in 20 minutes.
Didn't burn your clutch out or strip your gears?
Thankfully, no.
Now, Stephen, after being in the parking lot and teaching Heather how to drive stick shift, what did you do next on the day?
We went back to my mom's house where I was staying, and we watched a movie and just hung out.
Where did your mother live again?
In Merle's Inlet.
And how far away was your mother's house from the parking lot that you were at?
A 10-minute drive at the most.
In your house, where'd you watch that movie at?
In my bedroom.
Do you recall what you did after the end of the movie?
After the movie, it was kind of late, so I took her home.
Now, Stephen, do you recall exactly what time you took Heather home?
Not exactly, no.
Okay. Is it possible it could have been that you could have arrived at her apartment between 1:15 and 1:30?
Yes.
Now, when you got to Heather's apartment at the end of the day, did you go inside the apartment at that point?
Briefly, yes.
How did the apartment appear?
Like your typical 20-year-old girl's apartment.
Did you see anyone else in the apartment?
No, it seemed empty.
Did you see anything out of the ordinary in the apartment?
No.
When you left Heather Elvis, or I'm sorry, how long were you at the apartment?
Maybe 5 minutes.
I think you already answered that, but just to make sure. When you left, did you see anything that caused you to be concerned for Heather Elvis?
No, I did not.
When you left the apartment, were there any plans to get together again?
Yes, we had made plans to hang out the next day after I got off of work around 3 p.m.
Where'd you go after you left Heather Elvis' apartment?
I went home.
Now, Steve, I know you said you weren't sure exactly about what time you dropped Heather Elvis off. Were you present at her apartment when she had a 4-minute phone conversation?
No, it was not.
Was she ever away from you long enough at her apartment that she could have had a 4-minute phone conversation without you knowing?
No.
So if Heather Elvis had a 4-minute phone conversation at her apartment, it must have been after you left and dropped her off.
Correct.
Now, Stephen, did you have a chance to have any contact with Heather Elvis later in the night?
Once I got back home, I sent her a text message to tell her that, and we talked briefly for maybe 5 or so minutes before I stopped hearing from her.
Okay. How many times do you think you texted her?
Maybe 5 times between the two of us.
Okay. Was anything said or related to you in those text messages that caused you to have any concern for Heather?
No.
Where were you when you sent those text messages?
I was home.
And was that your mom's house?
Yes.
Did you leave your mom's house again in the early morning hours of the 18th?
Not until I left for work around 9:30.
The following day, did you attempt to contact Heather Elvis?
Yes, I called her maybe twice after I got off of work and didn't hear from her, and sent her a message on Facebook probably a couple hours later.
Did you get any response?
I did not.
What do you think had happened?
Maybe her phone was dead, lost her phone, left it somewhere.
Were you at that point concerned for her safety?
No, I just assumed that she was busy and that she would get back to me.
When did you first become aware that something had happened to Heather?
Later in the evening.
Objection to the form of the question, Your Honor. Overruled, Judge.
When did you first become aware something had happened to Heather?
Later in the evening, I believe, of the 18th, her roommate Bree messaged me on Facebook and asked me to call her, and that's when she explained to me everything that was going on.
Stephen, since the early morning hours of the 18th of December 2013, when you left Heather Elvis' apartment, have you seen Heather Elvis?
I have not.
Since those text messages that you sent her that night, later on that night, have you had any communication with Heather Elvis whatsoever?
None.
Stephen, do you recall what your phone number was in December of 2013?
Yes, I do.
I'd ask Your Honor permission for the witness to come up the stand and write on a piece of paper, on a legal pad or a giant pad, what his phone number was. Mr. Geraldi. If you would, Mr. Geraldi, please write your name as legibly as you can, and next to it, place the phone number that you had on December 13th, or December 18th, excuse me, of 2013. Thank you, Mr. Geraldi. You can have a seat. Now, Mr. Geraldi, you wrote a phone number of 443-624-6288. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Where's that phone number from?
Maryland.
Is that where you were from prior to moving to Horry County?
Yes.
Let me go back and ask you just a couple of additional questions. When you were on the date with Heather Elvis, was she talking with anyone on the phone regularly or in any way talking with someone on the phone?
After she asked me to take a picture of her driving my truck, she sent that picture to who I was under the belief to be her roommate.
Okay. But did she have a conversation with anybody?
No, she did not.
And I've already asked you to just clarify. When you left Heather Elvis's apartment, did you see anyone else there?
No, I did not.
And when you left, when were you planning on meeting with her again?
The next day after I got off of work.
At any point in the early morning hours of December 18, 2013, did you contact Heather Elvis from any other phone number than the one you placed on that board?
No, I did not.
Thank you, Stephen. That's all the questions I have. Please answer any questions Mr. Truslow might have.
Sure.
Mr. Geraldi, you're testifying today in front of the jury in this trial.
Yes, that's correct.
And you expect to be believed about everything you've testified to.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And as of up to this point, you really haven't been challenged on what you've said, have you, by the state?
No, sir.
Okay. Would you agree with me that you are the last individual to lay eyes on Heather Elvis?
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay. Is it safe to say that during your high school years, you knew Heather Elvis didn't know you?
I couldn't speak for her, but I did know who she was.
Okay. But you had no interaction?
Not that I can recall.
Okay. At the time that Heather disappeared, she was 20 years old. Do you know that?
Yes, I did.
So we're talking probably about 2 years post-high school, right? Been out of high school about two. Well, you were a year behind or ahead?
Ahead.
Okay, so you've been out of high school 3 years. She's been out about 2 years.
Yes, sir.
So 2 or 3 days before she went missing, you found her on social media and commented on a picture on her Instagram.
Well, I had already been following her on social media, but I did comment on her picture.
Okay. Now, when you say following her on social media, that means that you're tapped in and you can see things that she's posting out there.
Right.
The first time you reached out to her and actually commented as yourself was 2 or 3 days before she went missing.
Approximately.
Okay. And that got some type of response, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then you got to texting or posting or however that works, you got her to agree to go on a date with you within 2 or 3 days.
Yes.
You went to her apartment and picked her up.
Yes.
You took her to dinner.
Yes.
Nobody drank alcohol.
Nobody drank alcohol.
Okay. You then drove her to the but the vacant mall parking lot because the mall was closed, correct?
Correct.
And then you let her drive your car and learn how to drive a stick shift.
Yes.
And you took a picture of her doing it.
Yes.
And she wanted you to.
Yes, she asked me to.
Okay. When you took her back to her apartment, you went inside.
Briefly, yes.
Okay. What transpired inside? What did you
It
do?
was just a quick tour of, hey, this is where I live, this is my place. And then we said goodnight and shared a kiss and parted ways.
Did you share the kiss inside or outside?
Outside.
Okay. Was there any talk about you staying any longer than 5 or 10 minutes?
No, we were both tired and ready to call it a night.
All right. Would you, if given the opportunity, stay longer?
I don't think that I would have, no.
All right. When the prosecutor asked you what time you dropped her off, you said you didn't remember.
Not exactly, no.
And then he said, could it have been 1:15 to 1:30 a.m.?
Yes, it could have been.
Could have been, and it might not have been.
That's
correct?
a possibility, yes.
Okay. Now, after dinner, before you drop her off, you take her back to where you're living, correct?
Correct.
You take her into your bedroom, correct?
Correct.
And you watch a movie.
Right.
Do you recall which movie that was?
I don't remember.
Okay. Did anybody ever, December 18th, 19th, when people start talking to you, does anybody ever ask you what movie you watched?
No.
Okay. Now, you lived with your mom and your 20-year-old brother? He's 20
now, so he would have been 17 at the time.
Okay, you lived with your mom and your 17-year-old brother?
Yes.
What is your mother, did she work?
Yes, she's a zone manager for Walmart in Garden City.
Okay, and what shift was she working at the time?
She was at work, but she was working a second shift, so she probably got off around midnight.
Okay, got off around midnight. So, does your mom make a habit of staying up to 2 or 3 a.m., or does she usually sit down and get sleep?
Not usually. It just depends on the day she's had.
Okay. You told the state that you never went back out that night.
Not after I dropped her off and came home.
Okay. And that's on your honor.
It's on my honor.
And that's, we're to believe that that is true based upon your word.
Yes, sir.
And nothing else?
Yes, sir.
If you wanted to, could you have gotten your truck and left the house if you so desired?
Yes.
And went anywhere you wanted to go?
Yes.
Okay. Did you learn when you were dealing with solicitors and investigators that there was a period of hours that Heather was driving around, or it appeared to be by her phone that she was driving around in various locations, Longbeard's parking lot, different areas?
No, I did not know that.
Okay. There's no way that you left the house and followed her around?
No, there's not.
There's no way that you never left her house and stayed outside in your truck?
I went home.
Okay. According to you?
Yes.
Do you believe that that could be somewhat suspicious?
That I went home?
If somebody else looking at it, does that seem suspicious to you?
No, it just seemed like a regular night that two people went out on a date and parted ways.
And nobody else knows what you were up to, but you?
Yes.
I don't have any further questions.
Real briefly, Mr. Geraldi, just to clarify, where did you go after you dropped Heather Elvis off?
I went home.
And did you leave your house again that night?
I did not.
Did you contact Heather Elvis from a payphone or any other phone number?
No, I did not.
Then you stated that to the best, as far as you know, you were the last person to see Heather Elvis. Do you know if you met someone after you left?
I have no idea.
Did you now, or did you then drive a black and color Ford F-150?
I have never.
Did you drive down Highway 814 in the early morning hours of December 18th?
I don't even know what road that is, to be honest with you.
Did you ever drive down a road called Mill Pond Road?
No.
Did you go to the Peachtree Boat Landing on December 18th, 2013?
No.
And at your mother's house, who all lives there again?
My mom and my younger brother.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Nothing.
The state would request this witness be excused from his subpoena, Your Honor.
No objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. This time the state calls Casey Guswitz. He can correct you when he gets there.
Reverend, raise your right hand. Place your left hand on the Bible. You solemnly swear or affirm that evidence you're about to give before in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Good morning. First name is Casey, C-A-S-E-Y. Last name is Guswitz, G-U-S-K-I-E-W-I-C-Z.
Give her 1 minute. She's marking a few things.
Sure. Thanks.
Sure.
Sure.
Thank you. Casey, if you don't mind, tell the jury where you're employed.
Ma'am, I'm employed with the Ord County Police Department.
Okay, and if you don't mind, tell them how long you've been working with the county.
3 years with the police department and 3 years prior with the sheriff's office.
Okay, and if you don't mind, tell them what your current responsibilities are.
Right now, I'm assigned to the patrol unit out of the Central Precinct, Sector 14 area.
Okay, and were you working with the county police in December of 2013?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
Okay, and if you don't mind, tell the jury what your responsibilities were at that time.
Responsibilities include patrolling the area of Sector 14, and our responsibilities are to ensure the safety of the lives and property of the guests and citizens of Ward County.
Okay, so basically you were patrolling the area
Yes, ma'am.
and you were responding to any calls you were dispatched to.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now if you don't mind, tell them, were you working the early morning hours of December 18th of 2013?
Yes, ma'am. My shift started Tuesday, December 17th at 5:45 p.m. and scheduled to end at 6 a.m. The 18th.
Okay, so you were out patrolling, just so everybody knows what I mean by early hours, 1, 2, 3, 4 o'clock a.m.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, dark outside.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, if you don't mind, tell this jury, that particular morning of December 18th, did you have an occasion to go to Peachtree Landing?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay, and if you don't mind, is that part of your regular patrol?
Yes, ma'am. The Peachtree area is probably the easternmost part of my patrol area. And again, there's 2 boat landings down there on Peachtree Road that I check regularly.
Okay. Now, tell me this. Are there 2 landings in that area?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you go by both landings that night?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay. And at either landing, did you find anything suspicious that you got out and checked on?
Yes, ma'am. The Peachtree boat landing at the end of Peachtree Road.
Okay. Now, if you don't mind, tell this jury about the fact that there's 2 landings, where one is
I
located.
object to leaving. Thank you for that.
If you don't mind, tell this jury where both landings are located.
Sure. The Soxty boat landing is located. Sure. The Soxty boat landing is located close to Dick Pond Road in the Peachtree area. It's just after the Kensgar gated living community, and it feeds into the Intercoastal Waterway. The second is the Peachtree boat landing, which is at the very end of Peachtree Road, which I believe is the Lamar River.
Okay. And which landing did you find the vehicle at?
That would be Peachtree boat landing at the end of Peachtree Road.
Okay. And if you don't mind, describe that landing to this jury.
It's a very small boat landing. There's one road that leads into it. That road leads right directly to a stop sign. It's very dark at the end of that road. That stop sign is there just in case, if you did not know the area, you pretty much drive straight into the water.
Okay. And at that time, were there any street lights out there?
No.
Okay. So it's one way in and one way out?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And if you don't mind, tell this crowd what is around that landing.
There's just a small parking area on both sides of the landing. To the eastern side of the boat landing, there was a small trailer park with about maybe, I'd say 6 residents there. And to the west of the boat landing, there's nothing but swamp area.
Okay. And no street light?
No, ma'am.
And one way in, one way out?
Okay.
Now,
We're ready to leave, please.
thank you, Judge. If you don't mind, tell this jury what you saw that early morning when you went down to that landing.
Yes, ma'am. Shortly after 4 o'clock, it's about 5 or 6 minutes after 4, I pulled up to the Peachtree boat landing at the stop sign, and I observed just beyond the stop sign, there was a dark and colored Dodge sedan parked right in the boat landing.
Okay. If you don't mind, were there any other vehicles down there?
No, ma'am, that was the only vehicle that was there.
Okay. And what road did you take to get to Peachtree?
I came off of Dick Pond Road and turned onto Peachtree Road. And again, I checked the first boat landing after Kensgar and then drove directly to the Peachtree boat landing after that.
Okay. Now, when you were on your way to the landing, did you see anybody walking on the road or anything suspicious?
No, ma'am. That time of day and that time of night, especially that time of year, I would stop and ask somebody what they're doing that time if they need help.
Okay. And when you say that time of night, you really mean around 4 a.m. in the morning?
Yes, ma'am. 4 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. Now, when you get down there, you see the car. What do you do?
Listen, please ask questions and not leave.
I will. I'm just trying to catch them up to speed.
I understand, just ask the questions.
What did you see when you got down there?
Yeah. Again, I observed the vehicle parked awkwardly at the boat landing. It wasn't typically parked where people usually park their vehicles. They usually park them facing the riverside. I parked just enough where I could see the license plate number. So I ran the tag using my in-car computer. The license plate did not come back stolen. It was just a regular license plate. Came back registered to an Elvis subject. I exited my patrol vehicle and I approached the vehicle from the driver's side. I looked in the back seat first using a flashlight. I didn't observe anybody inside. Again, I checked the front seat. Nobody was sitting in the front seat. I checked all the door handles to make sure they were locked and secured. All the glass was secured. All the glass was intact. But around the passenger side, I did the same thing. Checked the windows to make sure they're all intact. Checked all the doors to make sure they're locked. I checked the steering column through the passenger side to make sure the steering column hadn't been tampered with. Showed no signs that it had been broken into. Checked the rest of the area looking around the boat landing to make sure there was nothing, no kinds of debris, nothing showing anybody was around.
Okay. So just so I'm correct, you roll up. Are your headlights on?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you have a spotlight on your car?
Yes, ma'am. I did activate the spotlight to illuminate the vehicle.
And did you use the spotlight that night?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So when you drive up, you have your headlights and you turn the spotlight on?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so I'm clear, you actually get out of the car and look at all these things around the car that you just told us about?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the car, was the car turned off?
The car was off, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And were all the doors and windows rolled up, closed?
Yes, ma'am. All doors were locked. All windows were rolled up and intact.
Okay. And did you look into the car?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you see any car keys in the car?
No.
Okay. Did you see a cell phone in the car?
No.
Okay. Did you see a cell phone or car keys anywhere out in the landing area?
No.
Okay. Now, you told this jury earlier that you also looked around the area?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, and is there a swamp to the right?
Yes, ma'am, just walk right.
Did you look in there?
Yes, ma'am, I would use my flashlight to illuminate it to see if there's anybody in there.
Okay, and did you see anybody in there?
No.
Okay, and did you look across the river?
Yes, ma'am, I looked out on the river, didn't see nothing, no boats, no nothing.
Okay, and did you look to the left?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you see anything out there?
No, ma'am.
Now, I'm gonna show you a few pictures if you don't mind, Casey. 1 second. And I've marked them. If you don't mind, as you're looking at them, let this lady know which one you're looking at by the number on the back.
Sure.
Okay, so if you don't mind, look through all of them and tell me if you recognize them. Hold on, I'm sorry, he's looking, okay, yeah, if you don't mind, thank you.
Sure. Look at picture number 3. And yes, I do recognize that one.
Okay.
Yeah. Picture number 4, yes, ma'am, I recognize this one as well. This is picture number 5, I recognize it. This is picture number 6, and I recognize it as well. This is picture number 7, and I also recognize this one, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and if you don't mind, tell this court how you recognize those pictures.
I recognize the area of Peachtree Boat Landing, and just being familiar with the area.
Okay, and if you don't mind, whose car is in those pictures?
That's my patrol vehicle in this picture, and I believe this is the investigator's car parked at the.
Okay, and were you present when these pictures were taken?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
Okay, and did you tell the person taking the picture how her car was parked that night?
Yes, ma'am, I instructed where the vehicle was parked.
Okay, and where that white vehicle is parked, is that where her car, Heather Elvis's car was parked?
Yes, ma'am, that's where it was parked.
Okay, and your car is in the picture as well?
Yes, ma'am, that is
And
my patrol vehicle.
Is that where your car was parked?
Yes, ma'am, that's how I lined it.
Okay, and are those pictures accurate of what you saw that night?
Yes, ma'am.
And is the lighting accurate as how it was that night?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And is the only difference the fact that it is an investigator's car parked there instead of the victim's, Heather Elvis?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, the state wishes to move into evidence states 3 through 7 and publish to the jury.
Without objection. States 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are moved without objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. Do you mind if the witness steps down so we can go through the pictures with the jury?
Only if you keep his voice elevated, please, so that the court can make sure.
Sir. Make sure you keep your voice up. This lady has to hear you.
Sure.
If you don't mind, let's go through these pictures. I'd like to go through them as you're coming up the road. I'm showing you now state's evidence number 6. Tell this jury what they're looking at.
What you're looking at here is if you were coming, as if you were coming down Peachtree Road from Dip Pond Road, straight on into the Peachtree Boat Landing and stop sign.
Are there any street lights in this picture?
No, ma'am.
Were there any street lights when you went down there at 4 a.m. on December 18th?
No, ma'am, there were none.
Now, I'm showing you now state's evidence number 3. Tell this jury what we're looking at.
What you're looking at right here is how I parked my vehicle behind hers. You can clearly see hers is parked just beyond the stop sign and not in the parking space. And I, again, aligned my vehicle safely behind hers to make a rear approach.
Now, these pictures are very dark. Tell this jury what way is her car facing?
Her car is facing towards the water.
And I'm showing state's evidence number 7. Tell this jury what they're looking at.
You're looking at the two vehicles parked, front to rear. This is at an angle looking facing west on the boat ramp, excuse me.
As you look past, what's back here?
Back in this area is up the trees and swamp area.
Now, I'm going to show them one more picture. This is state's evidence number 4.
Yes, ma'am.
What are they looking at?
Same thing. It's how my vehicle is positioned behind hers. And again, beyond the cars is just nothing but swamp and marsh area.
If you don't mind, tell this jury why you used your spotlight that night when you got out.
At that time, especially at the time of year, it's very dark, pretty much pitch black. You can't see nothing from as you get out of the vehicle without your spotlight, without your headlights, there's almost no visibility. And again, that stop sign is there because if you didn't know the water was there, you go straight into the water.
Okay. And I'm showing you now state's evidence number 5. You recognize it?
Yes, ma'am.
What is it?
That is the entrance to the actual boat land, the boat ramp, right there, just beyond the stop sign, facing the water.
Is that accurate? I had looked at 4 a.m. on December 18th?
Yes, ma'am.
If you don't mind, Casey, have a seat. I've got a few more questions for you.
Sure.
Tell tell this jury, when you first drove up behind her car, did you tell if anybody was in the car?
No, ma'am.
How did you discover whether or not someone was in the car?
Once again, I got out of my vehicle and made a rear approach and used a flashlight to inspect the vehicle, and there was nobody inside. It was unoccupied.
Okay. Okay. But there was no way for you to see from your car to her car if there was anybody in there?
Staying, bleeding, you covered that, so anyway, we won't.
I'm sorry, Your Honor?
Covered that already several times, but who said what he did.
It's okay. Now, about how long did you spend at the landing?
Altogether, it's probably there about 5 to 6 minutes tops.
Okay. And while you were down there, did anybody show up?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And while you were down there, did you see anybody or hear anything?
No, ma'am. Again, that time of year, that time of night, I was stopped and asked.
Okay. Now, had you been to that landing the night before as part of your patrol?
Are you referring to the Monday night?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, I have been, yes.
And was there a vehicle down there that night?
No, ma'am.
Now, when you left Peachtree Landing, tell this jury the route you took when you left Peachtree Landing.
When I left Peachtree Boat Landing, I headed back towards Dick Pond, but instead of going that way, I made a left onto Mill Pond Road. And after traveling Mill Pond Road, I made a left on Highway 814 and took 814 to Highway 544 and back towards Conway.
Now, when you were down there before you left, did you see any reason to call anything in?
No, ma'am.
Did you do an incident report?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Okay. Did you ever contact the person who the car belonged to?
No, ma'am, I did not.
And if you don't mind, tell this jury why you didn't.
Oh, at that, it's not uncommon for people to leave their boats, or excuse me, their vehicles parked at boat landings overnight or even for extended periods of time.
Okay. And at that time, did you have any reason to believe to do further investigation at the landing?
No, ma'am, it was just a vehicle parked at the boat landing.
Okay. And you never saw any signs of a struggle?
No, ma'am.
Now, when you left and went down Mill Pond and came up 814, did you see anybody walking on the roadway at that time?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And did you see anything suspicious on Mill Pond or 814?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, if you don't mind, tell this jury, are those secondary roads or are those main roads?
I believe they're secondary roads.
Any stoplights on Mill Pond?
No, ma'am.
Any stoplights on 814?
No, ma'am.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I may look at that one more time, just so my client can see it. Sure. Before it's used as demonstrative evidence. This is one by him? Okay, just let me show my client.
Sure.
Okay, no problem. Y'all, thank you.
Casey, I'm showing you now what we marked the state's exhibit number 8.
Yes, ma'am.
So this.
Sure.
Do you recognize what this is?
Yes, ma'am, that's a map I draw, or excuse me, I drew.
And if you don't mind, tell this jury what this is a map of.
This is the map of basically Mill Pond Road, intersecting with Highway 814 and Peachtree Road.
And does this show the route that you took?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And could you use this map to show the route to the jury?
Yes, I do.
Your Honor, this time the state wishes to put State's Exhibit 8 into evidence and publish it to the jury.
I'm going to object to that. I don't think foundation's been laid, there's roads missing from it, it's just a hand-drawn demonstrative.
It's a good subject, okay, but that's, he's already described, so you can go ahead and show it. That's,
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, can Casey step down?
yes.
Thank you. Now, if you don't mind, show this jury the route you took
Okay.
that night.
The building was parked down this area here, and I'm gonna head back towards Big Pond Road, which is intersects up this way. I made a left onto Mill Pond Road, and just.
Make sure you speak up because you're
Excuse me,
facing me.
I apologize. Again, I made a left on the Mill Pond Road, and I started traveling the road towards Highway 14, where here, again, it's the stop sign for this intersection coming out only, but not here. I made a left on Highway 14, back towards Highway 544.
Okay. And how long have you been patrolling this area?
Currently 3 years.
Okay. Now, you've got Peachtree Road coming in here. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
When you come to the end this way, where are you at?
At the end of this road here is Dick Pond Road.
Okay, and is there anything there at the end of Dick Pond Road?
No, ma'am, at the end of Dick Pond Road, there's the swing bridge and there's also an apartment complex, but further, a little bit north over here along Forest Brook and Dick Pond Road, there is a convenience store.
Okay, and about how far is that convenience store from Mill Pond Road?
No, I'm going to object because she's asking questions now that are off the map.
And then you come back to stand, because we finish the map, there's no need for him to be there, but objections based on, the overruled objection on that basis.
Yes.
Okay, if you don't mind, Casey, tell us about how far is the nearest convenience store from Mill Pond Road?
From Mill Pond Road, I'd say it's probably at least 2 miles.
Okay, and is there anything else at the end of this road, this Peachtree Road, when you go this way?
No.
Okay. And what else is to the right? When you come down Mill Pond and you take a right, what else is down there?
Again, there's a few roads leading into houses, and there's another trailer park down here on the side of the boat landing, and that's it. Nothing else.
Are there any stores, businesses, or anything open at 4 a.m. when you go down Peachtree Road?
No.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, is the store open that you were telling us about over here at 4 a.m.?
I believe it's open all night, 24 hours.
Okay. And that's the only location to the left of Mill Pond?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, and you went back Mill Pond Road, 814 up to 544?
814, and obviously 814 that goes around this way and reconnects to Highway 544. That's where I got back on Highway 544.
Okay. And are you familiar with where this defendant lives?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what road does he live on?
He lives on Highway 814.
Okay. And between Highway 814 and this first stop sign, how many ways are there to get to Highway 544?
Again, you can directly access Highway 544 from Highway 814 as they intersect. Then there's also one side road, there's Roscoe Road, which leads directly to Highway 544 and 814 and connects. And again, there's these side roads right here. Peachtree Drive leads into Peachtree Lane, and that will put you right back on Highway 544. And then, of course, if you take a left onto Mill Pond Road, it will bring you right back into Highway 544.
Okay. So there are 3 roads from the defendant's house to this first stop sign that lead back out to 544?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, if you don't mind, tell us how many roads from 814 to the end of Mill Pond that go out to Highway 544?
There's none.
Okay. So once you're on Mill Pond, there's no outlets to 544?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
You
Now,
only go to Peachtree for back that way. Excuse me.
okay. And let me ask you this. Once you go to this stop sign here, is there another way to get to Peachtree Landing other than going down Mill Pond Road and taking this right?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So once you're on Mill Pond, so you have to get on Mill Pond to get to Peachtree Road from 814?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. And about how long is it from the end of Mill Pond to the boat landing?
It's about 3/4 mile.
Okay. Okay. Now, does this map indicate where the defendant lives?
No.
Okay. And if you don't mind, tell this jury where he lives.
If the map were to extend, I mean, it'd be further on over here. We have abstract ones, we can probably be right around close over this area here.
Okay. And if you don't mind, tell this jury, can you see his house from the road?
No.
Okay. And if you don't mind, tell them why you can't see his house from the road.
There's trees blocking the view. There's also another residence parked in front of his. Or excuse me, parked, there's another residence built in front of his.
Okay. So tell this jury, when you were going that night down 814, could you see his residence?
No, ma'am.
Just a few more questions, Casey, if you don't mind. Have a seat. I'm gonna leave this up. I think I might need to ask you a couple more questions. What time did you leave the landing?
It was probably right around 4:06, 4:07, somewhere around there.
Okay. Okay. Now, if you don't mind, is that the route you normally take?
Yes, ma'am.
And how long have you been patrolling that particular route?
I've been patrolling that area 3 years now.
Okay. And that particular area you've been patrolling for 3 years?
Currently, but at the time, that night, it was probably about 6 months.
Okay. And if you don't mind, tell this jury the quickest route to go from 814 to Peachtree Landing.
The quickest route to get from 814 to Peachtree Boat Landing would be taking a right on Mill Pond Road and following all the way to the T intersection and making a right on Peachtree Road. That'll lead you right to it at its quickest.
So it'd be 814, Mill Pond, and then the landing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Casey, I don't have any further questions for you. Thank you. Please answer any questions Mr. Trussell has.
Ms. Lyson, could you leave that
You can leave it up.
there? Nancy, could you, I'll get you.
Leave it up.
I'm gonna move this,
No,
Jody.
he's gonna use
Oh, you
it.
want it up there?
Yes, sir. May I ask the officer down for a couple
Sure.
questions?
Just keep your voice out there.
Sure.
You take it.
I've just got one or two questions on this map. When you come down Mill Pond Road, you run into Peachtree Road, correct?
Correct.
If you turn right, you go down to the landing. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
If you turn left, you go up to a convenience store. You can get to a convenience store, it's open 24 hours, right?
Yes, sir.
You also can come up here and circle back around, that's old 544. It comes up to 544.
DePond Road, what we call it.
Right. And you can also turn right and go down towards the swing bridge,
Yes, sir.
which brings you into Socastee,
Yes, sir.
which is where all the restaurants and the other convenience stores and high school and all that area is,
Yes, sir.
right? All right, that's all I've got in regards to this. If you take a stand with this. And then just to summarize your testimony, outside of what we just did with the map, sometime after 4 a.m., you found Heather Elvis's vehicle, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you had to use a spotlight because it was dark, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's all the questions.
Read.
No further questions, Your Honor?
Okay, you wish the witness to be excused, Ms. Lyson? You wish to-
Yes, please, if you don't mind.
No objection.
You also approve the same, sir. Okay, go to the next witness.
Thank you.
Go to the next witness.
Thank you, Judge. At this time, the state calls Danny first.
So please raise your right hand, put your left hand on the Bible. You solemnly swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give the court in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God.
Danny, Lamar for FURR,
If you don't mind, Mr. First, tell this jury where you're currently employed.
Florida County Police Department,
And how long have you been with the county?
17 years.
Okay. And what is your current position?
My current position is sergeant on patrol,
Okay. And what was your position back in December of 2013?
corporal on patrol.
Okay. And if you don't mind, tell this jury what your responsibilities were as a corporal.
As a corporal, I assist both the fellow officers on the road in supervisory issues and also assist my sergeant above me in handling calls for service all around the South Precinct, but both supervisory role and ball taking.
Okay. And were you working in December of 2013?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you were working as a corporal, is that
Yes,
correct?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so that means you were on the road.
I was, yes, ma'am. Uniform patrol.
Now, in December of 2013, tell this jury, did you have an occasion to talk to the defendant?
I did.
Okay. And if you don't mind, tell this jury why you talked to him in December 2013.
I spoke to the defendant in reference to attempting to locate the Heather Elvis. We had gotten a report of her possibly being missing.
Okay. And if you don't mind, tell me first how you even got Sidney Moore's phone number to contact him.
Upon receiving the initial call, I responded to where Heather Elvis worked at her work location, which is in the city of Myrtle Beach, and spoke with the manager there, her boss, and he provided me the number for the defendant.
Okay. And how did it come about that he provided you with Sidney's number or the defendant's number?
In the conversation with the manager, it was learned that there was a relationship between the defendant and Heather Elvis. And in the further conversation of Sidney possibly knowing where Heather Elvis may be or have information of where Heather Elvis may be, I asked for his phone number to contact him, thinking that he would have direct information on where her whereabouts would be.
Okay. Did you know who Sidney Moore was before you went to Tilted Kill?
I did not.
Okay. Did you know anything about her relationship with the defendant before you went to Tilted Kill?
No, I did not.
Okay. And did the manager at Tilted Kill give you anybody else's phone number to contact?
No, he did not.
Okay. So you get the phone number, and do you contact Sidney Moore?
Yes, I did.
And how did you contact the defendant, by phone or in person?
By phone.
Okay. And did he pick up at the phone number you called?
He did.
Okay. And if you don't mind, tell this jury about that conversation.
When I made the phone call, of course, every time I call somebody, I identify myself. When I made the phone call, Sidney Moorer picked up the phone and I stated I was called for the Warren County Police Department. And there was a pause. And I said, hello, because I thought we had gotten cut off. And he said, yes. And I said, is this Sidney Moorer? And he said, yes. And I said, I'm calling in reference to Heather Elvis and whether you may have information about whether I can get in touch with her. We're currently looking for her and she may or may not be missing. And I need your help in reference to this. And I've been to where both of y'all had worked and where she still worked. And the manager had indicated that you may have some information on where I could find her or how to get in touch with her. From there, he stated that he had not spoken with her in at least 6 weeks. And we spoke a little bit further. And I asked again, well, what was the conversation? What is the relationship there? And he stated that he had actually talked to her the night before. And he had only talked to her to tell her to stop contacting him. I made reference to the fact that at first I was told that they hadn't talked in 6 weeks and now they talked the night before. From there, I indicated that we needed to speak further and someone needed to come in person to speak with him because I was getting 2 different stories. So that's when basically the conversation ended and I had indicated that someone would be able to speak with him in person.
Okay. And did he tell you that he had reached out to her the night before and called her?
He only indicated to me that she had been contacting him repeatedly and he had only spoken to her to tell her to stop contacting him.
Okay. And did he tell you how many times he had talked to her?
He didn't. He stated that he only talked to her once.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Did he tell you that he had called her from a payphone?
No, he did not.
Okay. And he didn't tell you he had talked to her 2 times that night?
No, absolutely not. No.
Okay. And once you talked to him, what did you do? Who did you contact next?
I contacted my subordinate, Officer Casey Canterbury.
And at that time, what did you direct him to do after talking to the defendant?
I directed him to go to Sidney Moore's house to speak with him in person in reference to Heather Elvis.
Okay. And did you give him Sidney Moore's phone number so he'd have his information?
I did.
Okay. And did you direct him to talk to anyone else?
I did not.
Okay. And had you gotten any other phone numbers or names other than the defendants from the people at Tilted Kill?
No, I did not.
Okay. And do you know if she was scheduled to come into work the next day?
She was scheduled for the next day, and that's why I originally went up there to see if she was either working or when she had to work again, but she was scheduled for the next day, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did anyone at the Tilted Kill indicate to you that, look, she may have just run off. She does that all the time?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So nobody ever said anything close to that to you?
No, ma'am.
If you don't mind, tell this jury, after you talked to him, why didn't you just end it there? Why did you send somebody to talk to him again?
During our phone conversation, I felt that there was some hesitation in the answers. And as stated before, I had received one answer about not speaking with her in 6 weeks. And then a short time later in the same conversation, I was told that they spoke the night before. Being that things didn't seem to be adding up, I felt a follow-up investigation with the defendant was necessary.
No further questions for this witness, right?
Officer Farr, I want to show you a crime report that you signed off on. Officer, I want to direct you to paragraph 3.
Yes, sir.
Now, in that, it states that you state that Sidney Moorer said that he had not talked to her since October and that he admitted that he had talked to her on the phone. Do you see that in paragraph 3?
Yes.
I just wanted to see if I could get a look at what he was showing Mr. Furman,
Well, it's what
just so we
you,
can be on the same page.
You need to mark it with identification so we have it.
that's what you give me on the market as defense, one for identification order.
Sure, but that's not his report.
These are being officers sent over.
The reporting officers can identify.
It's not, let's not have a conversation, please, brother. You cross-examine, put identification on this one, so not an issue.
All right, so let's start here on the first page of this, and if you could look up in the second column.
Yes, sir.
Where it says verified by,
And tell me who that report is verified by.
For Danny, myself.
That's you.
Yes.
And that's after you had directed Canterbury to look into this.
Yes.
So this is kind of a comprehensive thing of what happened, and then you having him go do what he did.
Yes.
Okay. So in paragraph 3 of this, does that not say that Sidney said that he had not seen Heather since October? Not that he had not called her or talked to her.
It does say,
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I do have an objection. The report he's reading off of,
What's the basis of, what's the basis of your objection?
that is not his report and it doesn't indicate the conversation he
Thank you
had
very
with the
much.
defendant.
Objections overruled. You can cross-examine. He's answered. I'm allowing you. The report is not being offered in evidence at this point. So,
Sir,
thank you.
And in reviewing that, as having been the reviewing officer signing off on that, can you also indicate that then he then admitted that he had talked to her last night, shortly after what you just saw?
it does state that, yes.
All right, that's all on that. So basically, you testified you may have had some hesitation and you want to follow up with Sidney Moorer, correct?
Yes, sir.
But it's not because he said he had not talked to her. He said he had not seen her, according to this report.
According to that report, Canterbury's report, that's what that states.
Which you read, and you are the reviewing officer and
I
you
am.
verified this, correct?
I am.
Now,
Very need to leave that.
oh, that's okay. Now, in terms of, I want to show you one more thing.
Okay.
In this same report that you reviewed, if you look at that last paragraph on the first page, at the same time this is going on, did you develop another suspect, Jeremy Fleming, in that paragraph?
I did not develop him as a suspect.
You're aware of it as being reviewed?
I am.
And was that because he was reported to be abusive to Heather?
Yes, I have been told.
Ex-boyfriend?
I was told that. I wasn't the one that developed him as a suspect.
All right, but that's part of the investigation?
It is, yes, sir. Yes, sir, it is.
Now, in terms of, you testified that you talked to the manager at Tilty Kilt, which is what then got you to Sidney to see if he had information, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's an individual by the name of Dennis Hart?
I don't recall.
You don't know who that was that you talked to?
I know I talked to the manager. I don't recall his name. It's been a while.
Okay. Just want to ask you if you can, you may not be able to, I want to ask if you can identify that. And then if you've ever seen that report.
I have not seen this report.
Your Honor, just, can I get a look at what he was showing the
I'm
witness?
sorry.
That's why you just said I've not seen it, so I guess it's not going any further, but you can show it to him. Because you can ask him about that now.
Can you recognize that?
You said you haven't seen it.
No, this is another
Oh,
one.
no, okay, I'm sorry.
I do recognize this.
Okay, sure, that counts.
Okay.
All right, this, and I'm going to give this back to you. Let me mark this as defense exhibit 2 for identification only.
Very well. Let me, before you do that. Ladies and gentlemen, when you hear identification, as I mentioned to you, exhibits will accompany you. If the report is marked for identification, that does not mean it's admitted yet. So please understand that, because a lot of times I have jurors ask a question, because it's not uncommon. Attorneys may ask about a document, but if they won't admit it, but you can, certainly you will consider the testimony about the document. The document itself will not accompany to your jury room unless it's formally admitted. Okay, thank you. Excuse me.
I'll give you back what you said, you identified that. Can you explain to me just, and if you need to review it, take all the time you need, but basically, can you just give me this, what that is, and not what all's in it, but what that is?
It's a supplemental report.
Okay. And what is basically the subject matter of that report?
The subject matter of the report is my response along with my officer's response to the initial call.
Okay. And if you need to review it, let me know, but does that go into your connection to the manager at Tilted Kill that we just weren't able to identify? Does that refresh your memory? That if that was Dennis Hart?
It states that I received information from the manager.
Okay. But in this document, it's not calling him by name, Dennis Harts.
I don't see that portion of it in skimming through the document.
Can you identify this document? Have you ever seen that?
I have not seen this document.
You had a chance to look at it?
Just now.
Okay.
I've not read it, no, sir.
Can you look through it a little bit more?
Okay.
I'm sorry, that's a good enough answer. I'm sorry. So this report and the one I just previously showed you, you've never seen these reports?
I haven't seen that report. I saw the first one.
The other one you didn't identify. All right, so in terms of talking to the manager of Tilted Kill, you don't remember him by name?
I don't remember by name. He identified himself as manager.
Okay. Do you remember anything else about
him? I remember he was dressed differently than everyone else.
Okay. Did you aware of any investigation as to him?
I have not, no, sir.
Have you reviewed the file in this case prior to coming to testify, or only your portions?
Only my portion.
Okay. All right, so again, after reviewing, just to summarize and I'm done, after reviewing the part that is your portion, you would agree with me that that report indicates from you and Officer Canterbury that what he told you was that he had not seen Heather Ellis since October.
I don't recall the scene part. I remember being told that he had not spoken to her in 6 weeks.
Okay, but the report we just went through, it doesn't say that, right?
Canterbury's report states that, yes, sir.
But you were the reviewing officer.
I was the verifying officer, yes.
Okay, so that report I'm saying, does that say?
It does.
He said that?
It does.
Says what? It says that he has not seen her since October.
It does state that, yes, sir.
And that he admitted he talked to her the night before.
Yes, it does state that, yes, sir.
Thank you. No further questions.
Just a couple quick ones. I know everybody's ready for a break. I'm showing you now what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 1. You remember Mr. Truslow asking you about that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and who wrote that report?
Officer Kenneth Canterbury.
Okay, and did you do a report?
I did not.
Do you ever do a report?
When my officer's assigned to the call, no, ma'am, I do not.
Okay, because you're in a supervisory role.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let me ask you this, do you review the reports?
I do.
Okay, but you don't actually write the reports?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so you didn't write a report, but Kenneth Canterbury did?
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I think there's some confusion. What did the defendant tell you that night?
The defendant told me by telephone that he had not spoken with Heather Ellis in 6 weeks.
Okay. Now, Mr. Truslow asked you about somebody abusing her. Do you remember that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you collect any information about any abuse or any altercation or any dispute from anybody that you talked with?
I did.
Okay. And if you don't mind, clear it up. Who was involved in that dispute or altercation with the victim?
Sidney and Tammy.
Okay. Did anybody say anything to you about any other man and her being involved with any altercation or anything like that?
No, ma'am.
Oof. Okay. So my screens are going in and out now. So we're probably going to lose service on this. I don't know. But I'm off tomorrow. So I'll probably come back with the rest of them tomorrow. Let me see here. This is day 2. And it goes several more days, actually. So, well, it goes to day 4. Then it has a closing argument. So we've got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 7 hours, maybe. So we'll try and figure that out. But thank you guys for hanging with me while I was making my candles. Yeah, I hope they settle down too. They are loud. Scared the hell out of me. And I was just making fun of it, like there's no storms coming. Storm just shook my house. Made the candles shake. So I don't know what's going on up there. It's a lot. So thank you guys again for hanging out with me, and I will see you soon.